Chapter 112. Talents come forth in large numbers. Roddick nodded and asked, "What about the emissary called Raphael?" Aristotle smiled. Goliath also mentioned the city of Uruk. He also sent a messenger to Gilgamesh. Send a spy to find out how Gilgamesh treated the messenger. When Raphael arrived at the Cape States, he sent a secret letter to the city lord, but there was no reply. He was treated to good food and drinks every day, but his residence was heavily guarded. In name it was for his safety, but in reality, he was under house arrest. When Walter arrived in Uruk, Gilgamesh and Enkidu had yet to return from their patrol. He waited in the inn for a few days. The two brothers who were usually in charge of receiving him were Abel and Cain. Both of them were nobles who had fallen from grace. When they were young, they had undergone a ritual to awaken their power. It was said that they had been practicing magic in the farmstead and had recently become advanced mages. Gilgamesh had praised them and promoted them to senior priests of the Uruk shrine. The governor praised them for their perseverance and willpower. Although their ancestral property had declined, they did not give up hope and hard work. Without any guidance or help, they practiced magic on their own and reached the intermediate level, which was enough to make many people feel ashamed. Promoting and putting these two brothers in an important position was also an example to encourage more talents to emerge in the city. The high priests of the Uruk shrine were also the high priests of the Uruk army. Lord Gilgamesh had recently been recruiting talents and strengthening the army. It seemed that he was preparing for war. In times of peace, it was always good to be prepared. However, the people of the city were rather puzzled. With the lord of the city and Lord Enkidu around, who would dare to invade Uruk city? Abel and Cain repeatedly asked Walter why he had come, but Walter only told them that Saya and Uruk had not been in contact for 2 years due to the flood. Therefore, Lord Goliath had sent a messenger to greet them, but he did not say much else. When Gilgamesh returned to the city, he summoned Walter. After reading the letter, he also did not say a word. He called Enkidu over and directly handed the letter to his most trusted brother. Enkidu read the letter and frowned. Goliath is really brave. He actually made such a suggestion. To be honest, I admire him. Gilgamesh laughed. There are not many people in the world that you admire. Goliath is indeed not simple, but I cannot answer his suggestion. My brother, what do you think we should do? Enkidu. I heard that the messenger, Walter, is a disciple of Goliath and is also the high priest of Saya. He does not know what kind of letter he has sent. Let's call him over and let him take a look at the letter. From the attitude of a student, he might be able to see what kind of person his teacher is. Gilgamesh ordered his men to invite Walter over. After exchanging some pleasantries, he dismissed all the servants, leaving only the 3 of them in the room. Gilgamesh smiled and asked, "Sir Waret, did you know the contents of the letter you sent me?" Walter shook his head and said, "My teacher, Sir Goliath, only wanted me to deliver the letter and let you open it. He did not tell me the contents." Enkidu handed the letter over. "You've traveled thousands of miles through the desert and experienced many dangers just to deliver this letter. It's a pity that you don't know the contents of this letter. Take a good look." Walter shook his head again and said, "My teacher instructed me not to open the letter. There's no need to be curious." Gilgamesh. "You didn't open the letter. Didn't you want my reply? I'll discuss the reply with you. Did Sir Goliath say that you are not allowed to discuss this letter with me?" Waret said, "Not really." Enkidu. "Then take a look." Since that was the case, Walter took the letter calmly. As he read, his expression became more and more solemn. Gilgamesh's slender eyes narrowed as he stared at him and said, "Sir Messenger, you sent such a letter. How should I deal with it? In order to show my loyalty to the kingdom, should I send you along with this letter to the king of Babylon?" Walter raised his head and said, "I'm just a messenger. I don't know the contents of the letter. But now that I've seen it, I won't avoid the contents of the letter. My teacher has no intention of becoming enemies with you. He not only sees the gods, but also foresees an impending conflict and war. Whether it's the will of the gods or the greed of the people, my teacher wants to do his best to prevent a tragedy. This is something I respect. I understand his thoughts, and I await your reply." Gilgamesh nodded approvingly and said, "Aren't you afraid at all?" Walter smiled bitterly and said, I'm very surprised and worried. But fear is useless because the letter has already been delivered. My lords, you are the revered heroes of the continent. You even dared to kill the gods. However, I would like to ask, what is the purpose of the two of you killing Humbaba? This letter is just a suggestion. You can either reject it or accept it. But why should you be afraid of such a suggestion? Since I dared to deliver it, why don't you read it? Enkidu suddenly slammed the table. The table sank several inches deep into the stone tiles. He laughed and said, Walter, you have guts to say such words in front of us. Whether we accept Goliath's suggestion or not, we won't make things difficult for you. I will personally escort you back to the border of Babylon. My lord, what kind of reply do you want to give? We don't want to make things difficult for this messenger. Gilgamesh said, I understand. Please tell Lord Goliath the truth. He thought for a moment and asked curiously, Lord Walter, I heard that you are a 6th level mage, is that right? Walter nodded and replied, Yes. When I came here, I was a 6th level mage. Gilgamesh sighed with emotion. The age of strife is also the age of heroes. Recently, there have been many talented people on the continent. I heard that the holy guardian of the Temple of Isis is the youngest supreme mage in the world. And in the Hittite kingdom, there is also a mage named Gakate who has just become a supreme mage. I didn't expect that the Hittite kingdom would also have a new supreme mage. Judging from his tone, Walter was sure that he would become a supreme mage. Walter wanted to say something but hesitated. He looked thoughtful but did not deny anything. Following Aristotle's advice, Roddick sent a spy to Uruk to inquire about the other messenger, Walter. The spy then returned to the Cape States to report. It had been more than a month. Gilgamesh did not make things difficult for Walter. Enkidu even personally sent Walter to the border. When Roddick heard the news, he also prepared to send Raphael back to his homeland. When Lord Julian heard that Saya had sent a messenger, he specially summoned Raphael and asked him about the situation after the flood. Raphael was very polite and answered as detailed as possible. Except for the secret letter that he himself had not read, he told the truth. Some time ago, Julian went to the capital of Igut and returned to Uruk to summon Walter. Then he went to Roddick for a secret discussion. In the secret room he said, The Pharaoh has ordered us to prepare for the attack on the Hittite kingdom. The Cape States will be our outpost. In the next 6 months, there will be a continuous flow of war supplies to the Cape States through various means. We must make all preparations, but for the time being, we cannot alarm the Hittite kingdom. Roddick sighed inwardly. What he had been worrying about was finally happening. He could not hide even if he wanted to. On the surface, he pretended to be puzzled and asked, Why is the Cape States the base for the attack on the Hittite kingdom? It seems more convenient to go out to sea from the Nile River and directly land on land. Julian explained, 1 year later, the land route from the Cape States to Saya will be restored. The pharaoh naturally has his reasons for choosing this route. 2 years later, the area around the original town of Duk will become 1,000 miles of fertile land. That will be the new rich territory of the central part of the continent. The goal of the Pharaoh kingdom is to make the Hittite kingdom forever and thoroughly submit to him. Only by occupying that territory can he intimidate the entire continent and establish a great achievement for the empire. Although Goliath's letter had already predicted this, but it was confirmed by Julian. Roddick was still shocked. He frowned and asked, Is this true? Julian answered affirmatively. Of course it is true. The elders of the Igut Academy of Magic have collectively made a prophecy. It is confirmed without a doubt. There was also an oracle in the shrine. Although the kingdom of Hittite had built shrines to Horus in various places, they did not lead their people to sincerely offer sacrifices. This kind of disrespectful behavior towards the gods was unforgivable. Therefore, this war is not only a war for the empire, it is also a war to protect the dignity of the king of Horus. Roddick's brows furrowed even deeper. Approximately when? Julian said in a low voice. This matter is still a top secret at the moment. Only the two of us are qualified to know. A war between nations required a lot of preparation. The mobilization of resources and troops could not be hidden from the eyes and ears of the spies, but it was better to delay the enemy's detection. Saya suddenly sent an emissary. I saw him today. I'm afraid that he sent someone at this time to test the waters. It is indeed a wise move by the lord of the city to keep him under house arrest. Roddick smiled bitterly. But I can't always keep this emissary in the inn. I was waiting for you to come back to discuss it. Arya smiled and said, That's easy. Give him the best hospitality. Give him the most expensive gifts. Choose beautiful women to serve him well, and order people to take him on a tour around the city. Let him see a peaceful and tranquil scene. Then send someone to escort him across the desert back to his country. This way, the emissary will have nothing to say. In the name of escorting the emissary, we will also send a messenger with guards to visit and see the situation there. Raphael stayed in the Cape States for 2 months. Roddick's original hospitality was already very good, but after Lord Julian returned, everything became even better. He was simply a VIP among VIPs. Raphael was a great noble of the Hittite kingdom. He could go deep into the dangerous wilderness alone, but he was equally at ease with the wine and wealth of the world. It's not like he hadn't seen it before. 2 months of almost no travel was just what Raphael wanted. He was very tired from crossing the Saya Desert. This kind of fatigue was different from ordinary fatigue. As a mage, his magic was almost exhausted and his recovery was particularly slow. He was not sure that he could cross the dangerous Saya Desert again in a short period of time and return safely. So he decided to take a good rest. 2 months later, Roddick came to apologize to Raphael again, explaining that Supreme Mage Julian was not in the city for some time, and was very busy with various things, so he neglected the emissary. During this time, he invited Raphael to travel around the city, see the customs of the foreign countries, and enjoy to his heart's content. If there was anything he liked or wanted, he could ask for it. After many days of fun in the Cape States, Raphael's magic was completely restored, but his strength continued to grow slowly. He was surprised and happy, but he did not say anything. Since the other party was so enthusiastic, he would enjoy it. He also asked to go out of the city and visit the mountains and countryside of the foreign countries. After this trip, almost a month had passed. At that time, when Raphael finally said goodbye and returned home, Roddick sent an emissary with a guard to visit him. This trip would be through dangerous deserts and swamps, and for the sake of safety he could not let the noble Lord Raphael travel alone. As for Roddick's reply to the secret letter, there was no reply. Not to mention what the cities were busy with, I was also busy recently. He led the savages out of the mountains and moved to a new home. There were more than 600 men, women, and children in Link's tribe. They also had a lot of daily necessities to bring. Large livestock were slaughtered for dry rations, and young animals were taken away to be raised. Such a team walking in the mountains was really dragging a family with them. When I and Madanzo came, it only took them 5 days, but when they returned, it took them a full month, which exhausted Link. The mountain road was not easy to walk, but for the savages who had lived in the mountains since childhood, it was not a problem. They just had to carry a lot of things. The worst thing was that many roads were cut off, and there were many dammed lakes along the way. When they left the mountains, there were several areas of swamps that were completely impassable. At this time, the advantage of Elmar and the 4 Ironbacks could be seen. They could carry heavy things across the water and swamps, especially in the muddy swamps. They were much more useful than carriages and boats. I gave the magical bone to Link, and let him drive the invisible ship across the lakes and swamps to transport his people. The invisible space on the ship was very large, but it was quite difficult for Link to transport too many people at once. All the clansmen and livestock had to go back and forth several times to transport them all. On the water, the invisible ship did not encounter much resistance, but in the swamps, it was quite difficult to carry a ship full of people. I did not move, and Madanzo just watched the fun with a smirk on his face. Link had almost exhausted his magic power. When he reached the town of Duk, he was really exhausted. He lay there and rested for several days without moving. Madanzo ordered his people to set up a temporary camp and made arrangements for the future. They brought enough dry rations for a year, and they could also hunt in the nearby wilderness. Osvan Tussalam prepared all kinds of seeds for all kinds of food and gave them to Link. He asked him to arrange for his people to sow the seeds in the next spring. He marked out various landmarks on the island, and told Link which land and mines belonged to the descendants of Duk. They could choose other places to cultivate their own farms. Parangons and ores could be mined at the foot of the Saya Plateau in the north. Parangons were not the most important resource at the moment, but smelting iron ore required time. Whether it was farming tools or weapons, they were urgently needed. If they wanted to mine, they would have to cross a swamp. The 5 ironbacks were the best escorts. After this great migration, Link finally brought his people out of the mountains and built a home on fertile land. This exhausted clansman had quietly achieved the 6th level of the power of 2 sides. After setting up a simple camp, they needed to plan the future stronghold. The mine was also a quarry, and the strong men of the savages were excellent craftsmen. I did not need to worry about this, but he needed time. With Elmar, Link, and Madanzo here, the safety of the wilderness was temporarily guaranteed. Large-scale conflicts would not spread here for at least 1 or 2 years. After everything was settled, I instructed Madanzo, "You stay here and help Link train warriors and teach them how to fight. They will be able to defend the homeland in future conflicts. When they have built a simple stronghold wall, and the warriors have learned how to fight, you can leave here and find me in Montefiore. I need to go to Saya first. You stay here and help Link." Link and Madanzo said reluctantly, "You led us successfully through the trial. We have all become 6th level sorcerers and warriors. What are you going to do now?" I replied, "The title deed of Duk was left by Moses in a secret place in Saya. I have to take it out first, just in case. I also need to study the terrain of the original charcoal forest, and complete the task given to me by the Temple of Isis. I know you want to follow me, but the people here need you more. It is more convenient for me to go alone." The Ironback King Elmar carried us through a large swamp, and came to the edge of the charcoal forest. I said to Elmar, "You should go back too. This swamp can't stop me, but the people live on a huge island surrounded by mud. They need your help to get in and out. You should practice your strength well. Don't learn from those monsters and make trouble out of nothing. Protect this homeland." Elmar turned back reluctantly. I carried Schrödinger in his big leather bag and continued westward. The charcoal forest had completely changed. There were still strange black shrubs growing on the high rocks, but the lower parts had been submerged by mud and stagnant water. It was a swamp in the forest. Even a boat could not pass through, let alone on foot. But the charcoal forest could not stop the footsteps of the supreme sorcerers and supreme warriors. Some of the passages in the strange rocks were very narrow. I did not use the invisible boat, and walked on foot with his staff. The muddy swamp and water were like solid ground under his feet. He walked with ease and calmness. Chapter 113. Unexpectedly, Murin appeared in the charcoal marsh. Amon bowed and asked, "Goddess, are you waiting for me here?" This was the first time he met her since escaping from the underworld. Murin smiled like a flower. "Don't call me goddess. My name is Yunnamna. Have you forgotten?" Amon was not stubborn. He stood up and said, "Yunnamna, are you waiting for me here?" Yunnamna smiled sweetly. "Amon, you really surprised me. When I sent people to the underworld to rescue you, I heard that you had escaped by yourself. My hero, can you tell me how you did it?" Amon took out a scroll out of thin air. "It was because of this that the gatekeeper of the underworld made way for me. I had 2 other scrolls at the time, the information annihilation, and the space turbulence. I used them both and luckily escaped from the underworld." Yunnamna covered her mouth with her hand in surprise. "Tiamat's wrath is a relic of Nero? No wonder that coward didn't dare to block your way. In your staff, there is a spatial artifact, Ventuself. You hid the scroll in it, and brought it into the underworld? How clever." Amon nodded. "Yes, this branch is my staff. You saw it on the Euphrates River. The parangons inlaid in it are indeed a spatial artifact." Inanna reached out and took Amon's iron staff. She caressed it and said in a slightly admiring tone, "What an exquisite staff. It should be the work of the most outstanding artificer. It's made of damask. The place where the parangons are inlaid is covered with a complete or core. If you don't pay attention, even the gods won't find it. She stretched out her slender fingers and opened the mechanisms on the staff one by one, revealing a corner of the turoculus, a quadricore, ventuscule, and flame elf that were embedded in the body of the staff. She then praised, "What a precious staff! For a sorcerer to have such a staff is amazing. You seem a little nervous. Is there any secret in this staff that I don't know?" No matter how calm Amon was, he couldn't help but feel a little nervous. This staff contained many of his secrets. He could hide them from others, but not from Inanna. As long as he didn't use it, even the gods wouldn't notice. But Yun-Namna had seen him use this staff. Yun-Namna played with the staff like an adult studying a child's toy. She pondered with great interest for a long time, and finally found the top of the staff. She touched it with her finger and opened the groove of the god's tear. It was empty. The god's tear had been put into the bone. The bone was now hidden under Amon's ribs. Like the cat in the bag, even the gods wouldn't find it if they didn't search Amon. Crazy. Ol once said that one must have the power of advanced body arts and advanced magic at the same time to open the most hidden notch at the top of the staff. Needless to say, Yun-Namna's magic was brilliant. But she didn't look like a warrior at all, yet she opened the groove with ease. In front of Amon, she had inadvertently revealed the secret of being a deity more or less. Amon was deep in thought. Yun-Namna exclaimed again, "This groove is so hidden and interesting. I haven't found it even though I've been with you for so long. Is it to be inlaid with the god's tear? The maker of this staff is very ambitious. There's more information in the turoculus. Amon, can I have a look?" Amon smiled bitterly. "If you really want to see it, can I refuse? Besides, you've already seen it. Why ask me?" Yun was a god. When he saw the information in the turoculus, he read it in an instant. This was the magic of supreme message magic. As he spoke, Amon felt lucky. When he became a supreme sorcerer, he had read Crazy Ol's last message in the turoculus. Crazy Ol's message was as follows. "My child, this is my last message to you. When you see it, you'll already be a supreme sorcerer. As long as you don't cause trouble, you can live a comfortable life, because you're already one of the strongest beings in the world. I've been through this, but I spent the rest of my life thinking about the meaning of existence. What's the essential difference between a creature like me, a stone on the ground, or a dog outside the door? Maybe this thinking itself is the meaning of existence. But the world is still the world. The stars are still flickering in the billions of years of life and death. When you feel noble in order to join the ranks of the strongest beings in the continent, people will indeed give you a noble status, so that you can get rid of the plight of a sorcerer. This is the lifelong pursuit of many people. But this is not our plight, nor is it my pursuit. I've been a sorcerer all my life. When you feel noble in the world, you often forget how small you are under the stars. All creatures will die. This is the great prophecy of the human world. This world doesn't really need anyone, because everyone will be gone, including you and me. So what is eternal? When I think, I seem to see the gods laughing. When I no longer exist, does the world exist for me? What's the meaning of the gods? Whether the laughing gods exist or not, whether they're idealistic or not, for me, the gods are dead. But Amon, you're still alive. I hope you can prove an answer, but I don't want you to become another bear. When you become a supreme sorcerer, you'll have unprecedented power. This power melts into your body and mind as if you were born with it. But one day you may face a dilemma. Is everything you have you? If so, who is the person who also has everything? Why are you you? If you lose everything, will you also lose yourself? This is my last hint to you. I'm sorry I can't teach you more. Good luck, my child. Nietzsche's last message was a series of questions and thoughts, without any specific training. When Amon read it, the message disappeared automatically. There were only 2 permanent magic messages left in the turoculus. The first was the scene of Amon kneeling in front of Crazy Ol, and the second was a line of Igut written on the wall. Amon, my name is Eco. These were the 2 messages that Yun-Namna saw. She smiled and said, I accidentally peeped into your privacy, but I'm your guardian. It's okay. Then she activated the wand, and a light and shadow appeared in the swamp. It was the scene of Amon kneeling in front of Crazy Ol. The goddess asked again. This man is the oldest living miner in Duk. He's also a sorcerer. So you learned magic from him. Is this wand also made by him? Amon told the truth. Yes, you're right. Yun Namna returned the wand to Amon. Amon conveniently restored all the open mechanisms to their original state. This inadvertent movement also exposed his secret. Yun Namna was surprised. Whether to open or close the hidden mechanism at the top of the wand, it requires at least the strength of the advanced level of body arts. I can see that you're already a supreme sorcerer. It's not uncommon for a supreme warrior to learn magic through the second awakening of power, but a supreme sorcerer who has gone through the second awakening of power and practiced hard body arts from the beginning can achieve the intermediate level. Apart from Gilgamesh, I seem to have only seen you. This was a very natural misunderstanding, and it also revealed something that many people were not clear about. It was well known that if a supreme warrior successfully went through the second awakening of strength, he could learn the intermediate and low-level magic. But in theory, a supreme mage could also go through the second awakening of strength. If he succeeded in awakening the power in his blood, he could also learn the intermediate and low-level body arts. But no supreme mage had ever heard of such a thing. The simplest reason was that mages had mastered magical powers beyond the knowledge of ordinary people, so there was no need and no desire to do so. For example, a person could easily fly on a heavy object, so naturally he would not walk on foot while carrying a small load. This was a natural change from ability to state of mind. There were also many other reasons. For example, the status of secular mages was far nobler than that of ordinary warriors. Mages had neither the need nor the disdain to practice body arts. Moreover, the practice of body arts was another kind of hard test that needed to be withstood by the muscles and bones. Otherwise, it would be impossible to make a breakthrough. Many supreme mages were already very old and had a high status, so it was impossible for them to start from the most difficult low-level body arts. Even if they did start, their achievements would be limited. The practice of magic itself would consume a lifetime of energy. Even a supreme mage would find it difficult to master all the esoteric high-level magic. Therefore, no supreme mage would go through the second awakening of strength and waste unnecessary energy to start from the most basic level of body arts. There was still a long way to go before they could finish learning the high-level magic. Over time, many people had the misconception that the second awakening of power was only for samurai. But today Inanna revealed Gilgamesh's secret. The governor of the city was a supreme mage, but he had gone through the second awakening of strength and started practicing body arts from scratch. After passing many tests, he had reached the advanced level. Amon asked with great interest, "Oh, what level of mage and warrior is Gilgamesh?" Gilgamesh's level of practice was his secret. He usually did not want to be mentioned, but Yun Namna casually told Amon. He is a 9th level supreme mage, and has also achieved the 6th level of body arts. You are also a supreme mage and a 6th level warrior, right? You are much cuter than him. That arrogant man does not even care about the gods. Unfortunately, he is not a god after all. Amon thought of another person. Crazy Ol's student, Bear, was also a 9th level mage. In order to explore the secrets of the gods, he practiced body arts from scratch and eventually became a 6th level warrior. Bear's situation was different from Gilgamesh's. He did not go through the second awakening of strength, but directly practiced the power of two sides. Chapter 114. Amon didn't want to talk about power training anymore. He was afraid that he would miss something if he talked too much. So he changed the topic and asked, "I heard that only living materials can be made into staffs, but this staff is made of damask steel. What's going on?" Yun Namna asked in reply, "Didn't the person who made the staff tell you?" Amon shook his head and said, "He's gone. He died in the flood." Yun Namna replied, "There's only one way to make a staff out of lifeless materials. It's like nourishing it with one's own blood. Only then can it be made into a staff. Many of the most precious artifacts need to be made in the same way. Making a staff out of damask steel is also a warrior's weapon. It's most suitable for mages who practice body arts like you. It's rare for mages to reawaken the power in their blood and practice body arts, But you're a miner from Duk, so it's not too surprising that you can do this. Amon, you really give me too many surprises. I'm waiting for you here because another goddess is looking for you. She heard everything we said. Amon was taken aback. Why was there another goddess looking for him? At this moment, he suddenly sensed a strong aura behind him. He quickly turned around and saw a woman standing in the swamp. Of course, it was impossible to tell the age of the goddess. She looked to be in her 20s, dressed in a light white dress, and her feet were bare but not stained by the mud. She appeared on the path that Amon walked on, and Amon didn't notice her at all. The goddess looked extremely beautiful. Her facial features, figure, and skin were almost flawless. Her dress was very well-fitting, as if it was a natural part of her body. There wasn't even a trace of it being cut. She wore a wreath of twigs on her head, and on the twigs, there were 5 white roses with pink stamens. The goddess, however, had a look of resentment in her eyes. She glanced at Amon and said to Inanna, Murin, did you send Dums to the underworld just to exchange for this mortal from Kella? Yunamna did not reply. Instead, she turned to Amon and said, Let me introduce you. This is Goddess Peloponnes. She thought that I sent my ex-husband Dums to the underworld in exchange for you. She wanted to save Dums, so she came to find you, intending to send you back to the underworld in exchange for Dums. I heard the news, so I specifically waited here. Amon, what do you think about this? Should I send you to the underworld in exchange for my ex-husband? The queen of the underworld detained Amon and asked Yunamna to exchange for a man she loved. Amon knew about this, but he dared not expect Yunamna to really do so. It was he who asked Yunamna to take him to the underworld, and it was his own behavior that angered the queen of the underworld. Of course, he had to bear the consequences, so he made a prompt decision to escape without hesitation. Amon never thought that Yunamna would send her ex-husband, Dums, to the underworld in exchange for him. How could he repay such a great favor? He had read many books about the gods in the temple of Isis, and he knew the names of Dums and Peloponnes. In the myths of the world, they were a pair of brother and sister. The relationship between the gods might be different from the understanding of mortals, but the relationship between these two gods was definitely not ordinary. They might even be blood-related siblings. Otherwise, Peloponnes would not have gone to rescue Dums. Peloponnes should have come to capture Amon and send him to the underworld, but Yunamna just happened to appear and stop her. How did he get involved in the love and hate entanglement between the gods? Amon couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. He hurriedly bowed to Peloponnes and said, Goddess, it was I who requested to enter the underworld. And I also left the underworld on my own accord. I bear the consequences of my own actions, and I have never asked anyone to exchange for me. As for the matter with Dums, I did not know about it, and I had already left the underworld at that time. I am just a mortal, and I do not understand the grudges between the gods. Peloponnes finally looked at Amon. When she glanced at Amon just now, it was no different from looking at a stone or a tree. Although she came to look for Amon, she only spoke to Yunamna. At this moment, she revealed a slightly surprised expression and said, Amon, you can still speak so calmly in front of the two goddesses. You claim to be a mortal, but it seems that you do not regard yourself as a mortal? Amon replied humbly, Goddess, you have misunderstood. I am just saying what I should say, no matter who I am in front of. And as a god, you must understand the truth of the world, which is contained in the glory of divinity, so you are respected by the world. Peloponnes stared at Amon, as if she had been trying to see through his heart, and slowly said, I saw the scene of you using magic to pass through the swamp just now. You are already a great sorcerer at such a young age, and like Gargamesh, you actually practice body arts. With the ability to escape from the underworld, it is no wonder that Murin would like you. Although she can like any man, why would she send her husband to the underworld in exchange for you? There is no such reason in the world. It really doesn't make sense. It seems that the ballad Gilgamesh sang was not bad. Amon and Yunamna had not done anything yet, but this kind of trouble had already arisen. But he could not blame Yunamna for anything. He could only explain with a wry smile. My escape from the underworld has nothing to do with Dums. If he really went to exchange for me, and Queen Kella could not hand him over, She should have let him go. You should have gone to Kella to reason with her, shouldn't you? As for this matter, it is the first time I have heard of it. Yunamna, why did you do this? Yunamna sneered and waved her sleeves. See for yourselves. A mirage-like light and shadow appeared in midair, and Aman saw two people sitting in a gorgeous hall. A beautiful girl was standing in the middle of the hall, swaying and dancing. Her gauze-like blouse just happened to cover the highest part of her chest, and the tempting balls of her breasts were faintly discernible. Around her bare waist and abdomen was a gold chain with a teardrop-shaped pendant hanging from it. The pendant kept slapping against her raised buttocks, making a pleasant tinkling sound. There was a reclining chair in the front of the hall, and a man was half lying on it. He was holding a glass of wine in his hand, and looking at the girl in front of him with great enjoyment. At this time, Yunamna suddenly shouted, "Shubra, Dums, what are you doing?" Then the girl knelt on the ground and explained with tears in her eyes. "It is your husband Dums who said that you went to the underworld, and your sister will not let you come back. He asked me to offer an erotic dance and serve him sincerely, and he will find a way to save you." After the light and shadow disappeared in midair, Peloponnes let out a sigh and said after a while, "Murin, Dums is your husband after all." Yunamna snorted coldly. "He was, but do you want such a husband? What's more, he married a deity, so he has to bear the punishment of betrayal." Peloponnes thought for a while and said, "You are the goddess of youth and love, so of course you always live in your so-called love. If you think that Dum's behavior is a betrayal that must be punished, it is not impossible, but what about yourself? You have also fallen in love with all kinds of men. Why not punish yourself for your betrayal? Among the men you've loved before, my younger brother, the handsome Temuzid, and that mighty and majestic Lion King, who hasn't been hurt, who can tolerate your love and heartlessness. What kind of punishment should you receive for the harm you have done to this love, goddess of youth and love? If you cannot answer my question, you will lose the transcendent power bestowed by divinity." Did Yunamna have so many stories? Aman was also very curious as he waited for her to answer. Yunamna replied without changing her expression. "Anyone can choose to love or not to love. The people I have fallen in love with have never been true deities. Only my husband Dums has the possibility of becoming a deity, but he has never been able to understand the true path. Are they the ones who have been hurt? No, you are wrong. You should look at everything from the perspective of the world. Every time the person who has been hurt, it seems that it is the person I love. There is only one reason, because I am a powerful deity. If I were an ordinary woman in the mortal world, only possessing youth and beauty, but not the power of a deity, what would happen to me? The person who has been hurt countless times can only be me. For example, your brother Dums, if I were not a deity or his wife, then I would be weeping in the dark underworld now, while he forced my maid to sacrifice herself to him in the name of saving me. His betrayal is not about love or not love, or who he fell in love with, but about forcing a woman who does not love him to give herself to him in the name of loving me. Goddess Peloponnes, why can't you have your own divine realm? It is because you can't fully understand why a deity is a deity. You think that you look at everything from the perspective of a deity, but you have not really understood the so-called source of divinity. The punishment I gave to Dums was the fate he gave me in his human nature choice. This long speech was a goddess answering another goddess's question, and it contained a lot of information about the deities. For example, Peloponnes said to Yunamna, "If you can't answer my question, you will lose the transcendental power bestowed by divinity." And Yunamna said to Peloponnes, "Why can't you have your own divine realm? It is because you can't fully understand why a deity is a deity." Aman seemed to understand something, but he could not fully understand it. Perhaps when he became a deity in the future, this information would be very important. In the face of Yunamna's sharp retort, Peloponnes's expression became more and more solemn. She also sneered and said, "Goddess of youth and love, your answer is not wrong, but the person you love is always reincarnating in a tragic fate, and this is not the glory that a deity should have. In this case, even if you have a divine realm, you will never be able to truly integrate it, unless this curse can be broken." Yunamna, this is my business, I have been looking for it. You don't have to worry about it. Peloponnes. I don't want to worry about you. I just want to save Dums. Chapter 115. Yun Namna turned sideways and naturally and intimately took one of Amon's arms, just like when they used to stroll on the grasslands. Half of her soft body pressed against him, and said with a smile, "My Amon, if you have something to say, say it. I'm very willing to listen." Amon cleared his throat and said, "What you said just now is very reasonable. Although there are many parts one still don't understand, I understand. Murin has her own reasons for punishing Dums, and she has already done so. And Goddess Peloponnes, if you want to save Dums from the underworld, then you should go to the queen of the underworld, Kella. I don't know about this matter, and I escaped the underworld on my own. If you want to exchange me for Dums, it will only backfire, because Queen Kella's condition is to exchange someone like Dums for me. If I am not there, there is no way to exchange. And if I go, it will be nothing more than a second time escaping from the underworld, and leaving Dums behind forever. Because I have already escaped, you can go to the underworld to find Queen Kella, and persuade her to release Dums if she can't hand over Dums. I know that the queen of the underworld is very difficult to talk to, but things can always be discussed. You are both gods. It is best for Goddess Peloponnes to go by yourself. I can see that the relationship between Murin and her sister doesn't seem to be very good." Yun Namna smiled and said, "Amon, you have made things very clear, and we two gods have gone off topic. But don't call me Murin, call me Yun Namna, didn't we agree?" Amon smiled bitterly and said, "When I call you goddess, I am more used to calling you Murin." Peloponnes looked at the intimacy between the two, and was very displeased. She said lightly, "Amon, your words are very reasonable. You actually have the guts to advise the gods what to do." Amon took Yun Namna and bowed slightly. "I was just talking about my opinion on a matter. I did not ask the goddess to do anything." Peloponnes turned around and said, "You two slowly make out. I will go to the underworld to find Kella." As she spoke, her figure slowly disappeared into the fog above the swamp. Yun Namna huffed and said in Amon's ear, "She let us slowly make out." Peloponnes said this. "This is an oracle." When she mentioned the word oracle, there was obviously a sense of ridicule, but her tone and movements were clearly full of desire and temptation, making Amon's ears and half of his body itch. Just then, Peloponnes, who had disappeared, suddenly appeared again, looked at Amon with a faint smile and said, "Young mortal, I want to remind you that Murin has a fate that she cannot escape, whether you believe it or not. Look at the final fate of the men she loves. Not to mention others, a few years ago, she pursued Gilgamesh but was rejected. I think you know why. But Enkidu took a fancy to her, and has always wanted to pursue the goddess of youth and love. Think about what will happen to you when you face Enkidu. Thank you for your advice, so I give you this advice." After saying this, Peloponnes disappeared again. Amon could not help but feel a little tense. Yun Namna was indeed not easy to deal with. He did not do anything, but he had provoked the continent's #1 warrior, Enkidu, for no reason. He remembered the last time in the suburbs of Uruk, Enkidu had personally said that if they met again he might kill him, and his tone did not seem to be joking. Yun Namna keenly sensed the subtle changes in Amon. She released her hand and looked at him faintly and said, "Amon, are you afraid of Enkidu? No matter how strong he is, how can he be a match for a god? I am your guardian." Amon shook his head and said, "It's meaningless to talk about fear. I have even broken into the underworld, let alone a warrior. So what if I am not a match for him? It is his right to choose who he likes. There is no hatred between us, and I have no intention of provoking him." Yun Namna showed a pitiful look again and asked, "Then are you afraid of me?" Amon shook his head again. "I have never been afraid of you. When we first met, I mistook you for a shepherdess. You took me to a strange town and gave me the best cake in the world. I just wanted to help you." Yun Namna laughed again. "You mistook me for Princess Sisela and went to save me with so many people. In the end, you were all fooled by Princess Sisela." Amon also laughed. "After that incident, I finally know who you are. I am also very grateful that you agreed to take me to the underworld to say goodbye to my father's soul. Since you've done it, I'll keep my promise and do my best to repay you. I forgot to tell you. I found the descendants of Duk on Mount Horeb in Igut, and stayed in Igut for a long time. Why haven't I heard from you? Yun Namna gently touched the back of his hand with her finger and said, That is the realm of the Inyad in Igut. It is a little inconvenient for me to go there. Besides, you have been hiding in the temple of Isis. It is even more difficult for me to find you. I also want to thank you. It is because you brought people back to Duk that I can return here smoothly and look forward to rebuilding my realm. Amon asked, not fully understanding. Is it because I am back that you can come back? Besides coming to persuade the goddess Peloponnes, is there anything else you want to do today? Yun Namna looked at him with her cherry lips pouted. You are really resourceful, leading the caveman tribe to build a stronghold first. But haven't you forgotten one thing? You promised me that you would guide them to rebuild my shrine. Amon smiled. Yun Namna, rebuilding the shrine is not a problem, but it is just a magnificent and luxurious hall and courtyard. When there is time, it can be built with a single order. Although I am not a god, I also vaguely know that a shrine does not mean a realm. The original town of Duk also had a shrine of Horus, but that was only an order of the kingdom to show submission. But no one really believed in it and worshipped it. Those cavemen have never even heard of Morin. And you have not given them real help and shelter. Even if I build a shrine, I am afraid they do not have faith from the heart, and do not understand the true spirit of divinity. Yun Namna shook his arm, looking like a spoiled little girl. I know these things better than you do. When I heard the news that Peloponnes was coming to find you in the Saya Plateau, I immediately came, not only for the goddess but also for us. As a god, I want to show a miracle to the people of Duk, and also give them a gift. This is the beginning of my rebuilding of the realm. Amon asked in surprise. What miracle are you going to show? And what gift are you going to give to the cavemen? Yun Namna replied, Wealth, magical and amazing wealth. The only relic in Duk is the foundation of my shrine, buried deep in the ground. There is a hidden cellar there, guarded by a magic array I personally set up. For hundreds of years, every high priest would receive my guidance on how to allow their souls to escape the imprisonment of Hades after they passed away. They will also put a batch of precious parangons in the most secret cellar, which can only be put in but not taken out. Mayor Dusty is an exception, so he does not know about it. I will send down an oracle to guide the people who arrive there to dig out the cellar, and hold a ritual to open it. Amon said thoughtfully, That's a good idea. It seems that you have been prepared for a long time. But in this isolated wilderness, wealth doesn't mean much. Money can't buy anything. Yun Namna smiled. Who said wealth does not mean much? They cannot be isolated from the world forever. This place is about to become 1,000 miles of fertile land. The first to arrive will be countless explorers, most of them in pursuit of the mysterious and unknown wealth. With such an amazing secret wealth in hand, they can hire wandering warriors, recruit craftsmen from all over the continent, and even have caravans send a steady stream of supplies. Otherwise, with the hard work of a few hundred people, when will they be able to build a magnificent city-state and kingdom? Amon pondered. This wealth should be used slowly. We can't let people know about it all at once. Otherwise, it may attract looters and robbers. Yun Namna smiled. With a supreme sorcerer like you and a portable spatial artifact, what kind of robber can rob it? This is the wealth that the gods have given to their believers to help them build a home and kingdom. If anyone dares to rob it, they will offend me. I don't mind directly punishing them, but it is better to be careful. Amon thought for a while and asked again. Yun Namna, you have so much private money. According to you, the wealth of Duk is offered by every chief priest. Is it also the inheritance of the descendants of Duk? Yun Namna shook her head and smiled. Yes and no. It has been offered to the gods, so it belongs to me. I will use it to rebuild the realm. For the people living here, it is like rebuilding their home. The descendants of Duk will also live in this home, isn't it? The wealth of the mortal world is both meaningless and meaningful to the gods. This is the reason. Amon nodded. All right, let's do it this way. It's good for everyone, and it's as you wish. Yun Namna's body leaned against Amon again. She held Amon's arm in her arms and said very intimately, Amon, I have another surprise for you. Amon was surprised. What surprise? You have done a lot. In fact, I don't have any more extravagant requests. Yunamna said. When I arrived here, I happened to see you leaving the cavemen. Among them was the warrior named Madanzo. They all call you Ammonius. They respect you from the bottom of their hearts. It seems that you have done more for them than the real gods. In this case, in the future, I can also worship your statue in my shrine. We can receive sacrifices together. Amon was shocked. How is this possible? I am not a god. Yunamna's smile was a little mysterious. Many gods in the world, when they first received sacrifices, they were not real gods. They were just human heroes. Amon's expression became serious. Yunamna, are you trying to tell me that a mortal can also become a god? He finally asked the question that Crazy Ol had been wanting to verify all his life, and he was looking forward to the real answer. It was a puzzle that could make people ponder for a lifetime, but it was so easy to get the answer. Yunamna put her cheek on Amon's shoulder and said softly, Yes, a mortal can also become a god. This is a secret, you can't talk about it, or you will be hostile to the gods. Amon frowned. Hostile to the gods? But you told me. Yunamna raised her head and looked at him affectionately. Because you have a chance to qualify, I will possibly extradite you to the Anunnaki divine clan. But whether you can pass the tests or not depends on yourself. You are a minor in Duk, not only a supreme sorcerer, but also a 6th-level warrior at such a young age. There should be hope. The answer to how to become a god was right in front of him, but he did not expect it to come so suddenly. Although Amon already knew in his heart that the path to godhood was included in the training of the body and mind of the two sides, he had not explored and confirmed the path after all. It was most convenient to have the guidance of a god. He coughed and asked again. So what do I need to do to become a real god? Yunamna reached out and gently pushed his chest. My Amon, don't worry, these are all things in the future. To be qualified to join a certain divine clan, and know how to become a god, you need to be recognized by the divine clan and make an oath. And I can only tell you when that day comes. Then she winked a little playfully and said, Amon, if there really comes a day when I extradite you to the Anunnaki divine clan, maybe the myths of the world will say that you are my son or husband. Amon's back was a little tight again. He could not help but think of Yunamna's ex-husband, who was still hiding in the underworld. He subconsciously reached out and rubbed his nose with a wry smile. I more or less understand the relationship between the gods. The myths of the world are only interpreted in a way that people understand themselves. Yunamna seemed to know what he was thinking, and she reached out and stroked his chest. My Amon, I just heard Peloponnes talk about my destiny, and I look forward to you helping me break this curse, so that I can become the well-deserved goddess of youth and love. Then, you will also obtain the secret of becoming a god. She put her hand on his chest, and her whole body exuded an indescribable charm of gentleness. But for Amon, the real irresistible temptation in the world was not wealth and beauty, but the secret of becoming a god. This was the goal that he had been pursuing for a long time, and the doubt that he was looking forward to solving. Amon grabbed Yunamna's hand, composed himself, and said softly, What do you want me to do? Yunamna murmured, You are already doing it. As long as you can help me rebuild this divine realm, you will be qualified to be introduced into the Anunnaki divine clan. At that time, you only need to make an oath to the gods, obtain the secret of becoming a god, and accept the sacrifices of the world with me in the shrine. I am looking forward to this beautiful future, which is also my liberation and transcendence. Amon held her hand and said, Although I don't quite understand your so-called liberation and transcendence, I will try my best to help you. If there is such a day, and I can't make an oath that I don't want to, I hope you can understand. Chapter 116. Link and the other cavemen who arrived at the town of Duk all had the same dream that night. Those who did not fall asleep also seemed to have a dream. Even Elmar, the king of the Ironbacks, was no exception. In the dream, a radiant goddess appeared. She wore a long dress that flickered with golden starlight. Her figure was dainty and her face was moving. She held an ivy staff in her hand. She claimed to be the guardian of this place, Murin, and gave an oracle. The goddess would bless the people who arrived here to build their homes. A magical and amazing wealth would be given to them to build a city-state. The messenger of the goddess, Amon, would guide them to the buried wealth and hold a sacrificial ceremony to open the treasure. The things left behind by Murin could not only be used to build all kinds of magical instruments, but also to hire wandering warriors, craftsmen from all over the continent, and caravans from all over the world. This wealth would be kept and used by Amon. The cavemen who had just walked out of the mountains suddenly dreamed of such a goddess. They all felt it was incredible. But when they heard the name of Amon, and saw their Amon holding Murin's arm intimately, they believed in the oracle. After dawn, Link gathered his people and held a prayer ceremony. They put up an altar and offered sacrifices to thank Amon and Murin. Interestingly, when these cavemen prayed, they put the name of Amon before the name of Murin. They naturally did so. In the dream, they saw Amon holding Murin, and he was half a head taller than Murin. Originally, Link and the others only worshipped a fire in the cave. Later, Amon became their only god, and there was also a cat who was the god's messenger. Now they offered sacrifices to Murin, not only because of the blessing in the oracle, but more importantly because of Amon. All the people were eagerly looking forward to the return of Amon, so that the prophecy in the dream would come true. Of course, Madanzo also participated in the prayer ceremony. While praying, he marveled in his heart. Ammonius, Ammonius, you are really amazing. When did you hold such a goddess in your arms? There is nothing you can't do. Madanzo had always known that Amon was not a real god. When he first met him, Amon was just a child who had not yet grown up, but he mastered magic and saved Madanzo's life. At first, Madanzo called him Ammonius, on the one hand, to learn magic, and on the other hand, to follow Link's lead. But later, Amon taught Madanzo the power of two sides step by step, making him a 6th-level magician and a 6th-level warrior at the same time. This was an incredible miracle in any country on the continent. Thinking back to Link's words, "You are my only god," Madanzo also said it without hesitation. When he passed the test of firm faith, he had already regarded Amon as a god, who said that gods were statues in the temple and not living people. Madanzo would rather a real god like Amon, at least more real than the statues in the temple. Leaving Link and Madanzo's expectations aside, Amon carried his staff through the charcoal forest and finally saw the high wall of Saya in the distance. He grew up in the territory of Saya and traveled to so many places on the continent, but today was the first time he came to the main city of Saya. Yunnamna did not follow Amon to Saya. The two parted at the edge of the charcoal forest. Before leaving, the goddess asked with a faint smile, "Amon, who is Iko?" Obviously, she also saw another message left in the Taraculus. Amon replied, "An old friend, she came to Duk." Yunnamna playfully reached out and touched the tip of his nose. "She is a girl, isn't she? Is she unforgettable to you? The youth and life of mortals will eventually pass away, and any moment of forgetfulness is a treasure of remembrance. I will keep this message for you. Maybe one day you will erase it yourself. Let me tell you a secret. Peloponnes laughed that the men I fell in love with all had no good ending, just because I fell in love with him. Whether she loved me or not, she was wrong." Amon did not want to talk about this topic, but he had to ask, "What did she do wrong?" Yunnamna. Mortals all have birth, old age, sickness, and death. In the eyes of a god, of course, there is no good ending. What is the curse that haunts me? I have been thinking about it. Is it because the man I fell in love with cannot live forever? Or does he need to have no regrets in his life? When walking into Saya, Amon was also thinking about this question. Did the amorous Yunnamna really fall in love with him? Not necessarily. She had feelings for him, and she definitely wanted to use and seduce him, but Amon did not dislike it. Yunnamna helped him and did not harm him. Even when he fell into the underworld, it was his own choice. As for guiding the descendants of Duk back to their homeland, it was also Amon's own wish. Maybe Yunnamna was just solving a puzzle. It seemed that gods also had their own troubles. The security of Saya was not strict. Without any interrogation, Amon easily entered the city. Located on the southeast edge of the Hittite Empire, Saya was originally an important border town and an important production area of fine iron and parangons. But since the flood cut off the land transportation with the neighboring countries, Saya had been peaceful for the past few years. People seemed to be leisurely and lazy. Aman came to Saya for two purposes. One was to retrieve the title deed of Duk, and the other was to see Goliath. When Moses was forced to leave, the title deed of Duk was still hidden somewhere in the city. He did not tell the envoy of the temple of Isis, Aman, but he told the Allah, who appeared as a god. In Crazy Ol's message, he specifically mentioned Goliath. He hoped that Aman must see Goliath when he had the chance. And he was very sure that even if Goliath did not help him, he would not make things difficult for him. Now Aman knew that when he was sent to Duk to avoid an impending disaster, it was also Goliath who privately instructed Mayor Dusty to do so. A supreme mage went all the way to Duk for the sake of a small miner. This was not a small favor. When he came to Saya, he found out that the situation was not what it used to be. No matter who mentioned Goliath, there was a look of reverence on their face. If anyone said anything disrespectful to Lord Goliath, they might be beaten. Goliath was now a 9th-level supreme mage, but he still stayed in the city as the chief priest. In Saya, his status was equivalent to that of a god without a title. A word from Goliath might be more effective in Saya than the Oracle of Enril, but the people here would not cross the line and call Goliath a god. In recent years, Goliath had hardly shown up. It was said that he only concentrated on practicing magic in the shrine. The affairs of the city were handled by Governor Xiao Mo, his disciples Walter and Raphael, the 3 high priests, and various officials. There were not many things to do here. People lived and worked in peace and contentment. It was not easy to see Goliath, and Aman's identity was sensitive. The Hittite kingdom had ordered him to be beheaded and sent an emissary from the capital, but this order was not carried out in the end because he had been sent by Duk to carry out another decree. Now that he was back, there were still some things that had to be dealt with. Under the name of Allah, Aman met Goliath's disciples Walter and Raphael in the desert. The 2 high priests had warmly invited him to visit Saya. If he wanted to see Goliath, he could go through this channel. Aman also heard something else that slightly surprised him. Walter had returned from Uruk. Before he left, he was a 6th-level mage. When he came back, he had advanced to the 7th level. The people of the city were overjoyed. They thought it was the glory of the city, and a symbol of the god's blessing. They admired Walter's teacher, Goliath, even more. It seemed that there was more than one young genius on the continent. Aman had just become a supreme sorcerer, and Walter had also achieved the 7th level. Before that, the adoratress of the temple of Isis, Maria, had become a supreme mage. Hearing that Raphael had not yet returned from his visit to the Cape States, Aman was not in a hurry to find Walter. He first went to get the title deed. The title deed of Duk was hidden in a place that everyone could see but no one would think of. It was in the manor that Mayor Dusty bought. Aman also bought a manor in Montefiore. There was a private shrine in the backyard, originally dedicated to Horus, but he replaced the statue with the goddess Batet. Dusty's manor was much larger, and there was also a small shrine dedicated to Enril in the backyard. After Moses and the others left, this luxurious manor was occupied by a group of vagrants in the vicinity, and every courtyard was occupied by people. They claimed that their relatives and friends were killed or injured in the conflict, and this residence was the compensation that Moses and the other Duk miners should give. Governor Xiao Mo was not easy to manage, so the past 2 years were peaceful. But no one dared to occupy the shrine in the backyard. After all, they could not blaspheme the gods, so it was left there alone. The title deed was in the pedestal at the foot of the statue of Enril. There was a stone slab at the bottom of the statue that was connected to Enril's foot. Even if it was lifted up, there would be no trace of it being hollowed out and closed again. Aman climbed over the wall and entered the backyard of the manor. He was already a supreme warrior and a supreme sorcerer. He was agile and good at hiding his tracks, so it was impossible for people to find him. He carried his staff and quietly went to the shrine. No one had been here for a long time. The altar was empty. There were neither offerings nor lamps. The statue of Enril stood quietly in the darkness. Amon stretched out his staff and pointed at the statue. The life-size statue floated in the air. He mumbled an incantation and a square crack appeared at the base of the statue. A stone slab floated down with a pile of things on it. It turned out that there was a hole in the base. Amon waved his hand and put the pile of things into the ventosylum. He pressed his staff down, and the statue fell down and returned to its original state. Hidden in the base of the statue were all the title deed of Duk, a special parangan and 20 gold coins. This should be the work of Mayor Dusty. He was really thoughtful. Even if this place was demolished, people would not dare to destroy the statue of Enril. Instead, they would move the statue elsewhere so that the things hidden inside would not be discovered. Only Moses knew this secret. In addition to the title deed, there was also money. The parangan was the most precious of the special parangons, the ventosylum. It was worth 500 ordinary parangons, which was a huge fortune. As for the other 20 gold coins, it was even more thoughtful. The ventosylum could not be easily exchanged for cash, and the gold coins could be easily exchanged for pocket money in the market. Even if the descendants fell, they could live comfortably for the rest of their lives with this inheritance. Amon had been to many shrines, but the feeling was different. In some shrines, the solemn statue seemed to have a mysterious life, watching the people kneeling in worship. It was interesting to say that in order to make Schrödinger happy, Amon erected a statue of the cat goddess Badet in his manor. The feeling was the strongest there. The statue seemed to be alive, and one could vaguely feel a kind of gaze when walking in. However, there was no such feeling in this temple. The statue of the great god Enlil was just a cold stone. Amon took the things and turned to walk out of the shrine. At the threshold, he suddenly turned back and said something as if he was talking to himself. Enril, great god, your eyes do not look here. The people of Duk offered the last of their wealth at your feet in an attempt to get protection, but were forced to go far away to be enslaved by a foreign country. Today I come to take it, and it will no longer belong to you. This is not a betrayal, but your choice to give up on Enril. We have nothing more to ask of you. I take the inheritance of Duk and bid you farewell. When Amon said these words, he did not know the cause of the great flood that destroyed Duk, nor did he know that Crazy Ol died in the challenge to Enril. The only person in the world who knew this secret was Goliath, whom he wanted to see. When Amon entered the manor to take the title deed of Duk, in a secret room in the shrine of Saya Enril, Goliath was watching a piece of information recorded by Walter. It was the scene of Walter and Amon's encounter with the Scorpion King in the desert. There was a paragraph that Goliath watched over and over again, and he was silent for a long time. The voices of the Scorpion King and Amon sounded over and over again. If I break the oath, I will never be a true god. If I break the oath, I will always be a lowly human in your eyes. After a long time, Walter asked carefully, My dear teacher, why are you not speaking? On behalf of Saya, I made a covenant and oath with the Scorpion King. Did I do something wrong? Did I go against your teachings? Goliath shook his head and said, No, you did the right thing. This covenant should be announced to all the people of the city in the form of a decree, to avoid unnecessary casualties in the desert in the future. I was just thinking about the oath made by the Scorpion King and Allah. That young man is not simple. You have become a supreme mage, and I am afraid his achievements are no less than yours. Chapter 117. Goliath suddenly sighed. Walter, you are the first of my students to become a supreme mage, and your future achievements are likely to be above mine. I have one thing to tell you. If this person becomes your friend, and one day I am gone, you and Raphael must not neglect or despise him. Walter said in surprise, Why do you say such a thing, master? You are already a 9th-level supreme mage, and your great power gives you a vigorous life, far longer than the average person. In my mind, you are like a god. Goliath sighed again. Gilgamesh showed you that letter, and you also know my wish, which is almost impossible to realize. I just want to try my best. Even if we are long gone after thousands of years, perhaps this wish will still not be realized in the world, but after all, someone has tried. This is the meaning of my existence, do you understand? Walter's expression became solemn. Master wants to build a new city-state on the thousands of miles of fertile land, jointly governed by the surrounding countries, coexisting in harmony regardless of race or faith. I am afraid that even the gods will not support this. But I understand why you are doing this. You have foreseen the never-ending disaster of blood and fire. And even if you cannot stop it, you want to do your best. As long as Master wants it, I will fully support it. This is also my wish. Goliath said solemnly. From the moment I achieved the 9th level, I made this vow, knowing in my heart that it will not be realized, but I can dedicate my life to it. As for you and Raphael, there may be another secret waiting for you to reveal. Even I do not know the answer. The young man named Allah is becoming more and more familiar to me. If he comes to Saya as a guest, you must bring him to see me. Amon did not know that Goliath had recognized him and was waiting to meet him, and after putting away the title deed, he still lived in the city-state. This time he did not find an inn, but spent a lot of money to buy a courtyard in the name of Allah, as a place to stay in Saya in the future. In the future he might have to travel back and forth between cities, so it would be more convenient to have his own residence. After settling in, Amon wandered around Saya to familiarize himself with the place. On this day when he was near the south gate, he saw many people gathering on the main road leading to the city gate. They all had excited expressions on their faces, as if they were waiting for something. After asking around, it turned out that High Priest Raphael had returned from his trip. Raphael did not alarm anyone when he left, but when he came back, it was very grand. The Cape States even sent envoys and guards to escort him, giving the High Priest the highest level of courtesy. Amon was looking for Raphael, so he stood in the crowd to watch the show. The guards at the gate lined up neatly to welcome them. Raphael's carriage was the first to enter the city, followed by soldiers from Cape States in bright armor. In order to show courtesy, other than knives and axes, all other weapons were put away. Raphael's eyesight was very good. He sat in the carriage with the hood up and waved at the welcoming people with a smile. When he turned his head, he happened to meet Amon's eyes. He immediately revealed a look of surprise and nodded at him, then quietly gave a few instructions to an attendant next to the carriage. At this moment, Amon had a very uncomfortable feeling. It was a feeling of resentment and fear, coming from a carriage behind. That carriage was the carriage of the envoy from Cape States. The curtains were down, so he could not see who was sitting inside, but Amon was sure that there was someone in the carriage staring at him from the corner of the curtains, full of hostility. Amon wanted to avoid and quickly disappear from the crowd. However, Raphael's attendant had already left the convoy and walked over. He parted the crowd and greeted him. Lord Allah, hello. Lord Raphael sent me to pay his respects to you. The crowd automatically parted to make an empty space for Amon. Everyone looked at him with respect. Amon had no choice but to return the greeting. Lord Raphael really has good eyesight to be able to recognize me at a glance among so many people. What advice did he send you? The attendant bowed and said, Lord Raphael is very happy that you can come to Saya. I wonder if you have met High Priest Walter? Amon shook his head gently. I have just arrived in the city and have not had the time to visit. The attendant added, In that case, Lord Raphael asked me to leave his address and welcome you as a guest. He also asked where you live in Saya. He wants to visit you personally. If you don't have a place to stay, let me arrange it for you. As they spoke, the convoy had gone far away. Raphael saw Amon as soon as he entered the city. He was going to the official office with the envoy from the Cape States, so it was inconvenient for him to stop. He specially sent an attendant to greet him to Amon. Amon thought for a while and left his address in Saya. There was nothing to keep secret. The hostile eyes in the second carriage attracted Amon's attention, but he was now a supreme mage and a supreme warrior. He was also alone, so he was not afraid of anything. Even if there was trouble that he could not deal with, he could always get away in this densely populated city. Moreover, he originally wanted to see Goliath, so Raphael took the initiative to look for him. When the convoy went far away, Faal Judah quietly put down a corner of the curtain and fell into contemplation with a gloomy face. He was the envoy who paid a return visit to the Cape States this time, and he had two tasks here. His official duties were to lead the guards to escort Raphael back to his country, to convey the greetings of the Cape States, to discuss the trade after the traffic was restored, and to secretly observe the situation in Saya. In addition, he had a private task, which was secretly given to him by Supreme Mage Julian. If there were two people in the Cape States who hated Amon the most, it would be Julian and Judas. The reason why Judas hated Amon was very simple. He had embezzled the money that Roddick rewarded to Amon, and his actions in Duk also indirectly framed Amon. Judas originally thought that Amon was just an insignificant minor, but he did not expect that Amon would later become an important figure. A small figure who had been offended and framed by him suddenly became so important that he could not sleep. He wished that Amon would be unlucky again. Otherwise, one day in the future, it was likely that he would be the one who would be unlucky. This was the mentality of many people, even though Amon had never offended Judas. As for Julian's hatred for Amon, it was so deep that the men he sent to kill Amon had disappeared without a trace. The adoratress sent someone to bring back the secret letter he had sent to the high priest Burke, and then released him to Saya, making Julian suffer in silence. As long as Amon was still alive in the world, he was like a thorn in his side, but there was nothing he could do. Julian was, after all, an 8th-level supreme mage, and one of the founders of the Academy of Igut. Although he was nominally under the jurisdiction of Roddick, his actual status was not lower than that of Roddick. In the Empire of Igut, he was also well-informed and very powerful. He could not openly offend the adoratress, but it did not mean that he could not offend Amon. When Amon was in the Temple of Isis, Julian could not do anything to him. And now the opportunity had finally come. Amon was sent to Saya to carry out a secret investigation mission, which Julian had heard through his own channels. If a spy like him was caught, his identity would not be recognized in public. He would either be interrogated and executed, or exchanged in private. In short, once Amon was exposed, not only would he fail the mission, but he would also most likely lose his life. It was Julian who had specially arranged for Faal Judah to be sent as a return visit this time. Sitting in the carriage, Judas remembered what Lord Julian had secretly told him. When you go to Hittite, in addition to carrying out the official duties assigned to you by the city, you have to pay attention to another matter. I heard that Amon was sent to Saya by the Temple of Isis to carry out a secret investigation mission. If you can find out his whereabouts, I think you know what to do? Faal asked with some apprehension. If Amon's identity is exposed and he is caught, will it affect the affairs of the Empire and the city? Julian smiled. He is going to spy on the situation after the flood. As far as I know, the Empire has sent more than one spy. Amon doesn't know anything about the real military and political secrets. Even if he is caught, the Empire of Igut and the Temple of Isis will not admit it. There will be no future trouble. Judas, this is a secret between you and me. If you succeed, it shows that you are a very capable man. I don't think you want to be a clerk forever, do you? Judas asked again. Why did the Temple of Isis send Amon to carry out a secret investigation mission? Arya sneered. It's nothing more than giving him a chance to be promoted again. The Isis shrine is facing a change of power. Someone is trying to cultivate his trusted followers, and I'm one of the people who are being pushed out of power. But don't forget, even if I am not the high priest of the Temple of Isis, I am still an elder of the Academy of Magic of Igut. The Academy of Magic of Igut has made a clear prophecy about the changes that will happen to Saya, and they have already received the guidance of the Oracle. Amon's mission is not important. On the way here, Judas was in a dilemma. He knew that Lady Julian wanted to use Hittite to get rid of Amon, which was in line with his intention. But he still felt a little uneasy. Besides, Saya was so big, and the hope of meeting Amon was very slim. But as soon as he entered the city, he saw Amon. What a coincidence! Was there really a god guiding him? Judas gritted his teeth and made a decision. He would let Amon disappear here forever. When he returned, Lady Julian would definitely appreciate him and put him in an important position, and there would be no more trouble like Amon. Goliath did not receive the emissary from Cape States. Governor Xiao Mo held a grand welcome dinner in his mansion, and asked the financial officer to accompany Mr. Judas to have fun in the city for the next few days. At the same time, Governor Schmull secretly issued an order. The entire city was still in a leisurely, comfortable, and peaceful atmosphere, but he secretly tightened the security checks to prevent spies from spying on important information. In the minds of officials like Governor Xiao Mo, they already knew that the conflict between Hittite and Igut was approaching, but it was not the time for a complete showdown. The more it was like this, the more they had to do on the surface, and the more hospitable they were to the emissary from Igut. Just that night, Captain Rees Mian, who was in charge of patrolling the city, received a secret report. A secret agent from the Empire of Igut had quietly sneaked into the city to spy on the military after investigating the strategic terrain of the charcoal forest, but was coincidentally recognized. The report also included the address of the secret agent. This person was called Allaha, and he had bought a house in the city a few days ago as a stronghold for secret activities. Before the declaration of war between the two countries, this kind of spy infiltration was very common, and the Hittite kingdom had also sent many secret agents to the Empire of Igut in the name of business or other things to carry out tasks. Both sides did not use weapons on the surface, but were secretly very guarded. Mian did not know whether the secret report was true or not, but he did not dare to neglect it. He immediately rushed to the house with a team of guards, and quietly blocked both ends of the intersection in the night. The heavily armed soldiers surrounded the house to prevent leakage, and to prevent the secret agent from taking advantage of the chaos to escape. Only then did he come to the door with a few elite men, ready to personally arrest Allaha. Mian was the captain of Saya's personal guards, and he was in charge of 3 personal guards. Usually, the 3 captains took turns to patrol the city, but today the governor had ordered Mian to personally go into battle to show his importance, and he just happened to be in time for this matter. It was really good luck. Mian's origin was also a bit special. 2 years ago, he was just a small leader of a courier station in the charcoal forest, and he was only in charge of a dozen soldiers stationed at the station. In that great flood, all the courier stations in Duk and the charcoal forest were washed away. Only Mian was calm in the face of danger, and he quickly led the soldiers to evacuate to the highest boulder nearby, tied everyone together with a belt, and held on to the bushes to wait for rescue. The supreme mage Goliath drove the blue boat deep into the flood to Duk, and on the way he rescued them. The group of soldiers were the only survivors of the flood. Whether it was when they were in trouble or when they were rescued, Muen had always been in command. Regardless of whether they were frightened or surprised, the soldiers under him had always maintained discipline under his orders. They did not show any signs of panic. They did not disturb Gaulier on the Blue Ark either, and were praised and appreciated by Gaulier. After returning to the city, Goliath specially recommended Mian to Xiao Mo, and he was put in an important position from then on. When Xiao Mo led his men to ambush Roddik's convoy, he lost a squad of guards, and of course, they needed to be rebuilt. So Mian became a squad leader, and later was called a division leader. Just a few months ago, Mian broke through the 7th level and became a supreme warrior, and was promoted to the captain of the entire Saya's guard, responsible for the safety of the governor and maintaining the order of the city. As a supreme warrior, Mian had the status of a noble, and he also served as the captain of the city's guard. His status was far more prominent than that of the courier station's small leader. He was deeply grateful to Goliath, the supreme mage who saved him and recommended him. Not only did he save his life, but he also recognized him. Because of this, Mian was dedicated to his duty, and as a supreme warrior he would personally come to catch a small secret agent. The envoy of the Cape States, Judas, was still here as a guest, so everything had to be done in secret. The night was very quiet, and the location of Allaha's house was also very secluded. The streets had long been emptied and martial law had been enforced. Mian inspected the house with satisfaction. Then he came to the door, pulled out his weapon, and kicked the door open. Under the feet of a supreme warrior. The thick wooden door was as fragile as a piece of paper, and it broke and scattered without even making much noise. Mian, with a shield in his left hand and a sword in his right, took the lead and walked in first. The front yard was empty, and the windows of the hall were lit. The people inside should not have rested yet. Mian did not talk nonsense. He took his weapon and stepped towards the door under the escort of his guards, then raised his foot and kicked the door away. This kick was very heavy. The door did not break, but the door shaft broke and directly slammed into the house. If someone hid behind the door and peeped, they would fall into the house together with the door. Mian's shield and sword flashed, and the guards on both sides with round shields and spears reached into the door from the left and right to block the flank. The cooperation was quite skillful. According to common sense, after the heavy door fell to the ground, Captain Mian should have shouted his name, explained the purpose of the visit, and let the secret agent take the initiative to surrender. When a small secret agent saw such a scene, and a supreme warrior like Mian personally led people to arrest him, it would be strange if he was not scared out of his wits. But something that left everyone dumbfounded happened. Muan had just kicked the door open when he saw the scene inside. He immediately dropped his weapon and knelt down with a thud. The guards on both sides also put down their weapons and knelt outside the door. The armor on their bodies made a crisp sound. The three of them said in unison, "We deserve to die, for disturbing you in the middle of the night." The soldiers behind all showed a look of horror. Without saying a word, they put down their weapons and knelt in the courtyard. There were indeed people in the house, not one but four. An old man and a young man sat face to face, not even lifting their eyelids, as if they did not hear any sound. There were also two people sitting side by side at the table, facing the door. They saw Mian kicking the door in, made a gesture to stop, and showed a stern look. It was the two high priests of Saya, Walter and Raphael. The door that was kicked away turned into countless pieces in mid-air, floating all over the ground, but not even a piece fell on the table or the four people. The young man was of course the secret agent that Mian wanted to catch tonight, Allaha, and the old man opposite Allaha was actually Goliath. The two were playing chess. What they were playing was an ancient game called beast fighting chess. This game used various beast-shaped chess pieces to replace different soldiers. They were arranged into formations on a large chessboard to restrain and kill each other. It was very complicated to calculate, and only a few people could understand it. The rules of these two people were even more peculiar. There was no chessboard or chess pieces at all. Instead, the light and shadow of the military beast chess appeared in the void on the table. The chessboard changed into a battle between beasts, and it was a demonstration of the chess game. Chapter 118. The minds of the two players seemed to be completely immersed in the game of chess. They paid no attention to the movements of the outside world, and continued to play chess with full concentration. Walter and Raphael watched the game without saying a word. If the game was a battlefield, then they were the people watching from the sidelines. Goliath sat motionless, and Mian did not dare to speak. The whole courtyard fell into a strange silence. They had come aggressively, but the scene had become so absurd that they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Mian could not help but curse in his heart. Who was the one who told him the secret? Why didn't he find out and let him kick open the door of the room where Lord Goliath was playing chess? This was simply too rude. Was someone deliberately framing him? Who was the young man who was playing chess with Lord Goliath? Was he a supreme mage from the capital? Mian wished he could catch the informant and beat him half to death, but he could only kneel at the door without saying a word and wait for Goliath to finish the game, looking extremely embarrassed. Fortunately, the waiting time was not too long. After about the time of a meal, Amon suddenly looked up and smiled. "Lord Goliath, I admit defeat. Your magic and chess skills are far above mine. Today's game has been an eye-opener for me, and I have learned a lot." With the voice, the light and shadow of the game on the table disappeared. Goliath twirled his beard and laughed. "Thank you, young man. I haven't played such a good game for a long time. Your chess skills are very good. It seems that you must have also studied military formations, but you lack actual command experience. As for magic, with your achievements, it is already quite long and lasting, obviously surpassing mages of the same level. It is really amazing. If it were someone else who could change the game for such a long time, they would at least have to take out a staff. You did not show any signs of losing. If we want to decide the winner of this game, we have to play until dawn. You don't want the people in the courtyard to kneel all night, do you? Haha, I don't want that either. After saying this, the 9th level Supreme Mage turned his head and smiled at Mian. Our Supreme Warrior, you came here late at night, and your way of greeting is quite unique. I'm playing chess with a friend who came from afar. I'm sorry I didn't greet you earlier. Did I disturb your work? If you have something to say, you can continue. I won't disturb you. Mian's forehead was already sweating, but he wisely didn't try to defend himself. Instead, he shook his head and said, I received orders to arrest a person, but the information I received was wrong and I barged into the wrong door. Please forgive me, Lord Goliath. Goliath waved his hand. The night is cold. You're still wearing your armor. Don't kneel. Stand up and talk. Please take a good look. Is the person you want to arrest here? Mian stood up and shook his head firmly. I've checked. There's no one I want to catch. Goliath's smile was very friendly. Guard Captain Mian, are you sure? Mian nodded with certainty. Of course I'm sure. Goliath had just said clearly that he was playing chess with a friend who came from afar. How could he catch this person? Not to mention whether this person was a spy of the Empire of Igut. Even if he was, there was probably more to it than meets the eye. What's more, that person was a Supreme Mage. Mian and his men would not be able to catch him. How to deal with this person was already Lord Goliath's business. Mian didn't even want to ask any more questions. Just then, there was another movement outside the door. Governor Xiao Mo came in with a few guards, and was also surprised to see the scene. He hurriedly crossed the threshold and came into the house. He saluted Goliath and said, Dear Supreme Mage, why are you here? The guards on patrol were too reckless. I'm sorry to disturb your evening chat. Just now, a guard had reported that Guard Captain Mian had brought people to arrest a spy. A large number of soldiers surrounded a courtyard and kicked open 2 doors in succession, only to find Lord Goliath and 2 high priests fighting with someone inside. Governor Xiao Mo had already fallen asleep. When he heard the news, he hurriedly put on his clothes and rushed to see the situation. Goliath smiled and pointed to Amon. This is Mr. Allaha, a disciple of an old friend of mine. I am very pleased that he has achieved the 7th level at such a young age. He once rescued Walter and Raphael who were in danger in the desert, and happened to pass by Saya a few days ago. I was in a good mood tonight, so I played a game of chess, but I didn't expect the Supreme Warrior Mian to come and greet me. Xiao Mo hurriedly explained. It's a misunderstanding, it's all a misunderstanding. Mr. Allaha is a Supreme Mage from afar, and your friend. He also saved 2 high priests in the desert, so he deserves a grand reception. I won't disturb you any longer tonight. I will hold a banquet at the governor's mansion another day to thank him. Amon also got up and returned the salute to Governor Xiao Mo. Goliath smiled and shook his head. There's no need to hold a banquet at the governor's mansion. He just came to talk to me. This is a private meeting, there's no need to disturb others. Mr. Allaha will return to Igut tomorrow. Since it's a misunderstanding, Governor, go back to sleep. I'm sorry to disturb you. Governor Xiao Mo tactfully went back to sleep. He had been in charge of Saya for many years, so how could he not know? There were no carriages or horses on the street or in the courtyard outside the door. Goliath and his 2 disciples obviously came on foot, not wanting to disturb anyone. This was a private meeting. It was unknown where Muan had gotten the news from, but he had come to capture the spy and had surrounded the entire courtyard. With Goliath's ability, how could he not notice the movement outside? There were 3 Supreme Mages sitting in the room. As long as Goliath sent Walter or Raphael out to greet them, he could let Mian take his people away, but the old man did not do so. It was said that the old man was playing chess with the young man, and the game was very serious, as if he was waiting for Mian to kick down the door. Goliath clearly wanted Mian to see him on purpose, tactfully saying that the old man already knew about the matter and would deal with it, and that the others should not meddle or talk too much. If the Supreme Mage was really a spy of the Empire of Igut, they could not act rashly in this city. Goliath and the 2 high priests were present, and the others could not interfere, let alone intervene. If the Supreme Mage was not a spy of the Empire of Igut, the consequences of this misunderstanding would be very serious, so it was better to pretend not to know. Xiao Emo apologized and left with Mian. These people were really efficient. No one knew where they found just the right door planks, but in a short time, they gently repaired the door and the courtyard door, closed the door, and retreated. Xiao Emo ordered Mian and his bodyguards not to speak carelessly, and Mian ordered the guards to retreat to the intersection of the streets around the courtyard, not allowing others to disturb them. Silence returned to the darkness. Not long after, the door opened, and Walter and Raphael came out, then gently closed the door and stood guard in the courtyard. Only Goliath and Amon were left in the room. When they were alone, Goliath did not hide anything and asked directly, Amon, counting the time, we haven't seen each other for nearly 3 years. I saw you once outside Mr. Nietzsche's house. I really didn't expect to see you here today. You've grown up, and you're already a supreme mage. This supreme mage's eyes were so sharp that he could still recognize Amon today. Even though it was only a glimpse at night, Amon bowed and said, Yes, I am Amon, the miner from Duk. I know that you are a friend of Master Nietzsche, and that you helped me in the past. It is not until today that I have the opportunity to express my gratitude to you. Goliath sat there, looking at Ammonius with a look full of emotion. A good teacher produces a good student. Only Nietzsche can teach such an excellent student like you, but you are not like him. Amon, since you have returned to Saya, and I have recognized you as the chief priest, I have to ask you a few questions. Amon replied respectfully, Please ask. Goliath thought for a moment and then said, I have heard about what happened to you in Igut. You returned Nero's relics in Cape States, later became an honorary warrior of the Temple of Isis, and made a meritorious deed at the blessing ceremony. These are all your own experiences, but you left Duk to carry out the decree of the Empire of Hittite, so the first thing I want to ask you is, have you completed your mission? It seemed that the two countries really did a lot of infiltration work between each other. Goliath even heard about Amon's deeds. Amon smiled bitterly. Your Excellency, my mission has been completed. According to the official announcement of the Empire of Igut, the evil Archmage Bear was destroyed 34 years ago, and Troni, the adoratress of the Temple of Isis, made a holy sacrifice for him. Perhaps it was an oversight, but this announcement was not sent to the Hittite kingdom. Goliath nodded. In that case, your mission has been completed, and the town of Duk is no longer there. The Hittite kingdom should not pursue the case of the miner named Amon. Let me ask you again, are you a secret agent of the Empire of Igut? Amon did not deny anything. He told the truth. I don't know what you mean by secret agent. I did accept the mission from the Temple of Isis to investigate the terrain of the desert and swamp after the flood. The reason why the adoratress sent me to carry out this mission is that I have long told her that I want to go back to my hometown. Goliath smiled. The desert, lakes, swamps, and grasslands are there. Anyone who wants to see it can see it. As for what it will become in the future, I think the leaders of all the kingdoms already know. So it doesn't matter whether you see it or not. But this time you came to Saya, is it to spy on the military intelligence? Amon shook his head. No, I only came here for 2 purposes. The first is to see the manor left by Mayor Dusty. It should have belonged to Moses, but it was occupied by a group of scoundrels. So I bought this manor to settle down. The second is to see you, Lord Goliath. Mr. Nietzsche once told me that if there is a chance, I must see you. You may have something to tell me. Goliath was startled. He changed the topic and continued to ask, Since you are not here to spy on the military intelligence, someone told me that you are a secret agent sent by the Empire of Igut, trying to harm the Hittite kingdom and Saya. What do you think? Amon replied frankly, I was forced to leave my hometown. After many twists and turns, it was the Temple of Isis who took me in. The Hittite kingdom is subservient to the Empire of Igut, at least for now. I only asked to go back to my hometown to see what it has become. The Temple of Isis asked me to report what I saw. If you think this is a violation of the laws of the Hittite kingdom, feel free to deal with it according to the law. Goliath thought for a moment and smiled bitterly. Most of the conspiracies in the world are afraid to be exposed. Since you said so, it really is not a violation of any laws, at least until the Hittite kingdom and the Empire of Igut publicly break off. Amon, do you know why I let those people break in and see you with me? Ammon did not answer and asked in return, "Please enlighten me." Goliath, "After playing that game with you, I know very well that they can't catch you at all. Once they make a move, it will only cause casualties to the innocent people around. An outstanding 7th level mage like you won't give up so easily." Ammon said very modestly, "But in front of you, I have no chance to escape at all. It is very easy for you to take me down." Goliath suddenly blinked and said, "Is that so? Even the Scorpion King does not dare to attack you easily. You must have something to rely on. It is said that Nero made a Tiamat's wrath in his later years, and you are the one who obtained his relics, right? Let's not talk about the legend. You did not violate the laws of the Hittite kingdom, and completed the task of that year. I just came to see the younger generation of an old friend, and played a game of chess with you." Ammon did not say anything more. He knelt there and bowed again. "Thank you." Goliath sighed and shook his head gently. "You don't have to thank me. In fact, I did not really help you, whether at the beginning or now. If there is a possibility that we will meet on the battlefield in the future, I will not be polite or merciful." Ammon, "You have given me enough help. Why do you say that?" Goliath, "Because we are in different positions. I know more and more things than you know, that's all. Let's not talk too much about official business. There is one thing I want to thank you for. You rescued my 2 students in the desert. But I have a question in my heart, and I ask you to answer it." As he spoke, the Supreme Mage waved his hand, and another ball of light appeared in the room. It was the scene of Ammon and the Scorpion King swearing an oath to each other. The two said respectively, "If I violate the oath, I will never become a true god. And if I violate the oath, I will always be a lowly human in your eyes." He waved his hand again, and the light disappeared. Goliath showed a thoughtful look and asked, "The oath between you and the Scorpion King is very profound. What kind of secret does it contain?" The Supreme Mage spoke too directly. Ammon did not want to lie, but did not know how to answer. While he was hesitating, he heard Goliath say again, "You don't have to answer in a hurry. Before making such a request, I also want to show you another secret. I have buried this secret in my heart for a long time. Not even to my closest relatives. Finally, I have waited for you." Goliath stretched out his left hand and shook it gently, and a staff appeared out of thin air. He wore a ring on the middle finger of his left hand. It seemed to be a spatial artifact similar to the one left by Nero, and the staff was hidden in it. With the appearance of the staff, the tables and chairs in the room, and the 4 walls seemed to become transparent and gradually disappeared. And Ammon felt that he had come to another world. Information magic could show traces of light and shadow, which was not unusual for Ammon, but Goliath's brilliant magic directly brought Ammon into a scene from a long time ago, as if he was there. The flood was a turbid ocean. The sky was covered in dark clouds that were as dark as ink, and it was raining cats and dogs. Flashes of lightning streaked across the dark sky, bringing with them a deafening sound that made people not know where they were. A ball of lightning fell, stirring up a spiral of bright marks in the water. At this moment, a voice shouted angrily, "God, you have finally appeared in the world. I have waited for too long." A figure separated the waves and flew straight into the sky. It was crazy old Nietzsche, his messy hair and beard fluttering in the air, the staff in his hand emitting thousands of golden ribbons of light. His eyes were wide open, looking for the god behind the dark clouds and lightning, cursing loudly and waving his staff as if to poke a hole in the sky, exuding suffocating madness. The god in the clouds finally appeared. Nietzsche threw his staff in the air, and it burst into a ball of golden light like the most dazzling sun. He launched the strongest attack of his life, and laughed wildly, telling the god not to dodge or be afraid. Then countless thick lightning gathered from all directions, and heaven and earth shook. Nietzsche also turned into a ball of dazzling light, and immediately disappeared. This part of the scene disappeared, but Goliath's magic was not over yet. In a flash, he was in a tall and majestic shrine. Goliath was kneeling in front of the statue of Enlil, praying, when he suddenly heard the voice of the god. It was the flood that destroyed Duk. The heavy rain brought the flood. The warm and humid wind from the sea mixed with the air currents of the Saya Plateau, causing the heavy rain. It was my divine power that made the air currents of the plateau spiral. It was my anger that guided the lightning in the clouds. Ammon also heard the cry of Goliath in his soul. But what about Duk? No one survived the flood. Enlil replied, the flood is my blessing to Saya. I will hear the cheers of the people, and my shrine will be flooded with grateful believers. You will understand all this soon. As for Duk, do you want to ask me why I did not save them from the flood? Why should I save them? Then a piece of information was imprinted in Ammon's mind. It was the various things that happened in his hometown after he left Duk. Many children died, a series of tragedies, people prayed to Murin, but at the same time, they violated the oracle of the patron. Then he heard Enlil's voice again. Priest, do you see? They have betrayed the oracle of the patron, and there is no reason for Murin to stay there. So I will bless the land again. The flood is my blessing, but people can't just ask to enjoy the blessings of the gods. I don't need to save the sinful people from the flood. Chapter 119. Goliath reached out and pulled Ammon up. Boy, you can stand up now. I don't know if your shoulders and knees can bear all this, but I believe you are stronger than I thought. Mr. Nietzsche chose such an ending and deliberately let me see it. He must be trying to tell me something. Ammon stood up. He still felt very heavy physically and mentally, just like the helpless child many years ago. He continued to cry on Goliath's shoulder. Goliath just patted his back gently and did not speak. After an unknown period of time, Ammon stopped crying and found that his tears had wet Goliath's shoulder. He wiped his tears and said, Mr. Goliath, I can't describe the gratitude in my heart. Today someone finally told me all this. That god, the god named Enlil, I just recognized him. I met him in the town of Som in the kingdom of Babylon. He was a shepherd at that time. And just a few days ago, I said goodbye to that god. From now on he is just Enlil. I will not forgive him, even if I may become a god one day. Goliath was surprised. Boy, how can you say such a thing? Is this the secret of the oath you made with the Scorpion King? Ammon nodded. When you asked me just now, I didn't know how to answer. Now I understand why Mr. Nietzsche asked me to come to you. He wanted you to tell me all this, and he also wanted me to tell you what he has been pursuing all his life. You and I are the people he has pinned his hopes on. Mr. Goliath, please sit down. Let me tell you about Mr. Nietzsche's thinking, and the answer I have verified. The two sat down at the table again. What happened in the room, from beginning to end, could not be detected by the people outside. Walter and Raphael waited patiently in the courtyard until the sky began to brighten. When there was a glimmer of light outside the window, Ammon finally finished what he wanted to say. He also talked about his experiences over the past few years. Goliath let out a long sigh and said, Child, this is a secret that everyone in the world yearns for even in their dreams, and you told me just like that. There were still traces of tears on Ammon's face. I can't say that this is my repayment to you or my revenge against the gods. Even if it's only because of Master Nietzsche's wish, I should still tell you. There were some people I wouldn't tell no matter what, but there were even more people that it would be useless to tell them. You are already a supreme mage of the 9th level, so it is easy for you to understand everything I say. Goliath's expression was very complicated. He closed his eyes and said after a while, I have experienced too much in my life. I'm afraid it will be very difficult for me to confirm this path from the beginning. In fact, with Master Nietzsche's talent, he should have achieved higher achievements than me. But he spent his life searching for this path and left it for you to confirm. My hope is very slim, but among my students Walter and Raphael should have a chance. Ammon asked, You already know this secret. Do you want to teach Walter and Raphael the power of two sides? What Ammon said to Goliath was completely different from what he taught his students. Madanzo, Link, and others only knew that this was a unique way of practicing power. Ammon never said that the power of two sides was the path to becoming a god. But in front of Goliath, he explained everything clearly, and a supreme mage of the 9th level could naturally understand the profound meaning of it. Goliath shook his head and said, I will not teach this power to the two high priests as the chief priest of the shrine of Enlil. Besides, all this is the path you have confirmed. Even if my achievements are higher than yours, I am afraid I can't teach it to my students like you, because I have not confirmed it myself. Amon, I have a personal request. Can I ask you something? Amon nodded and said, Don't say anything, please say it. Goliath thought for a moment and said, If there is a chance in the future, please lead them on this path. I know it can't be forced, it all depends on each person's fate. What you practice is not only the power of two sides, but also a belief different from that of the shrines in the world. If one day, they encounter difficulties in life and need guidance, please don't forget my request at this time. Amon thought carefully for a moment and finally nodded and said, Master Goliath, I will remember, I will not forget. Goliath stood up and said, In fact, I have another conjecture. Whether it is body arts or magic arts, it is possible to become a god when practiced to the extreme, but I am afraid this is more difficult, and the test you will face is unknown. Let people like me and Enkidu verify it, and the power of two sides that you practice should be the secret of the gods. Amon was a little puzzled. You and Enkidu? Goliath replied. I am a supreme mage of the 9th level, and you have just understood what I have experienced. You are not clear about Enkidu's situation. He is a pure warrior who has never experienced the second awakening of power. It is not that he cannot, but that he is unwilling. He wants to practice body arts to an unprecedented peak, to prove that mortals can also be as powerful as the gods, or at that time he will be a powerful god. Amon let out a long breath. I see, this warrior's ambition is really not small. Before leaving, Goliath said again, You want to guide the descendants of Duk back to their hometown, and you have led the caveman tribe to build a home in the swamp. In the near future, the fertile land will inevitably cause disputes between countries, and the home that should flow with milk and honey will be a land of blood and fire for thousands of years. I have a wish. I hope to build a new city-state there, coexistence regardless of race, regardless of religion. I wonder what you think. Amon said solemnly, This is even more difficult than a mortal becoming a god, but I admire your wish. If this wish can really be realized, I also hope that the descendants of Duk will live in such a city-state. Goliath sighed. Although the hope is slim, at least someone has tried. This is what I am thinking. It can be foreseen that there will also be disputes between the gods, and people will drive their own desires in the name of the gods. Amon, do you know who betrayed you this time? Why did the guards break in when I was visiting? Amon thought for a moment and asked, Who is the messenger sent by the Cape States this time? I met a convoy at the south gate, and sensed a hostile gaze. Goliath. You mean Faal Judah? Then please wait a day, before you leave Saya, I will give you something. After saying this, he was about to go out when he heard something fall on the table with a thud, startling the 9th level supreme mage. Looking back, it was a cat falling from the roof beam. It was Schrödinger. Today, when Goliath came to visit, Schrödinger did not want to show up and ran to the roof beam to hide. None of the 3 guests found it. Just now, when Goliath used magic and chatted with Amon for a long time, the cat watched and listened very carefully, its eyes wide open and its ears pricked up. Its head stretched farther and farther from the roof beam. It seemed to be a little distracted and accidentally fell. The cat's body was flexible, and it turned in the air and landed lightly on the table. Of course it was unharmed, but Goliath was startled. The supreme mage looked at Schrödinger with a strange expression. Amon, is this your cat? Amon nodded. Yes, this cat is my friend. It was originally Mr. Nietzsche's cat, and has been with me since. Its temper is a bit special, it doesn't like to deal with strangers, but it likes to watch. Goliath patted Amon on the shoulder and said hesitantly, Oh, I have some impressions. It wasn't like this at the beginning. Young man, to be able to raise a cat like this, its future is limitless. Take care. The next afternoon, Goliath called Governor Xiao Mo to the shrine and asked him, Governor, what is the origin of the informant? Who is the mastermind behind it? Have you found out? Xiao Mo replied, This morning you sent Walter to assist Mian in the investigation, and specifically reminded him to start with Faal Judah, and it has been found out. It was Judas who sent someone to bribe the vagrants in the city to inform the guards. The person who told Judas Mr. Allah's address was the attendant who welcomed High Priest Raphael back to the city. When Judas entered the city, he saw Amon in the crowd. At that time, Raphael sent an attendant to leave the convoy to greet Amon, and Judas then sent one of his men to get information from the attendant, asking him what had happened. The attendant was unsuspecting and casually replied that Lord Raphael had seen an old friend he had met in the desert when he entered the city, and had sent him to ask for the address. In this way, Judas easily found out where Amon was staying in Saya, and then sent someone to inform. Goliath ordered, "Find an opportunity to arrest Judas' man, interrogate him in secret, and get a confession and conclusive evidence, then give it to me." Xiao Mo asked puzzledly, "Honorable Supreme Mage, do you want to report Judas to the Empire of Igut? Isn't it a good thing for us to have such a person in the enemy's camp?" Goliath sneered, "It's not my business whether to report him or not. Do you think a little clerk like him can really fight a supreme mage like Allah? He dared to frame someone without even knowing who his opponent was. Such a person is incompetent, and his conduct is despicable. Get the evidence and give it to me, don't ask anything else." A day later, Amon left Saya without alerting anyone. Raphael personally sent him back to the edge of the charcoal marsh and handed him something. "This is a gift from Master Goliath. You can decide what to do with it." After bidding farewell to Raphael and entering the marsh, Amon opened the thing in a deserted place. It was an artifact that recorded information about magic. This artifact was different from the Taraculus. It was only a one-time use, and after recording information, it had no other use. After the information was erased, the artifact would be destroyed. The information inside was the process of interrogating Judas' man, and the whole process of Judas framing Amon. Amon's face darkened after reading it, and he suddenly remembered the warrior Maki who had tried to murder him in Duk a long time ago, and the words that Crazy Ol had said. When anyone makes a choice, it is tantamount to choosing the corresponding consequences, whether they are willing or not. If you choose to forgive and forgive, you must understand and be able to bear the consequences of this forgiveness. He put away the artifact, crossed the charcoal marsh, and returned to the place where Link and the others were standing. Link and Madanzo were looking forward to Amon, and the tribesmen were cheering enthusiastically. The cavemen were also very efficient. Amon had not left for long, but they had already built a rough but strong wall around the temporary settlement, which could prevent the attacks of ordinary beasts. Relying on the wall, they could also carry out defensive operations. According to Amon's vision in the future, this place would be built into a magnificent city, but that was only a long-term goal. Things had to be done step by step, and things had to be done step by step. As the flood slowly receded, the construction work could be carried out step by step. Amon led Link, Madanzo, and dozens of tribal leaders to build a simple altar and pray to Murin. Amon wanted to participate in the prayer ceremony in person, but Link and Madanzo pulled him aside and advised, "Ammonius, you and Murin are on the same side. Everyone saw you hugging the goddess in your dreams. Even if you don't stand on the altar to receive the sacrifice, don't kneel down and pray with us." Amon could only smile bitterly and let them be. After the ceremony, according to Murin's instructions in the dream, Amon led the people to the original ruins of the shrine and dug down. First, they cleared more than 10 feet of silt, and then they dug to the original soil layer of Duk. The shrine had long been destroyed, and there was not even much gravel left of the foundation. They continued to dig down another 20 feet. And even when they had reached the hard rock layer, they still found nothing. If it were not for the clear guidance of the oracle, no one would continue to dig. At this time, Amon sensed a faint fluctuation of power, so he ordered the cavemen to dig down another 10 feet. After clearing away the gravel and floating soil, a huge rock that had fused with the underground rock layer was exposed. He ordered everyone to retreat to the ground. Holding the staff in his hand, he murmured an incantation and floated in the air. Inexplicably, a shining pattern appeared on the surface of the rock. It was the trace of a magic formation. While Amon was pondering, a sudden rumble came from the bottom. The huge rock split into 6 pieces, revealing a hole in the middle. Inside the hole, various parangons of different colors shone brightly. This treasure was not opened by him, but by Yun Nam Na. She was waiting for him to come. Unfortunately, the shrine had long been destroyed. How did the chief priests of the past put the wealth of the sacrifice in here? In the flood, Enril took away the remaining parangons of Duk and turned them into glittering droplets that shot into the sky. Goliath saw it with his own eyes. But the most hidden treasure in the shrine of Murin was not only protected by the magic formation of the goddess herself, but also protected by the power of the earth. The things inside were not taken away by Enril. Now they were all left to Amon. The cavemen who were watching around the huge pit did not know what was going on. They saw with their own eyes that Amon stood in the void like a god and took out his staff. Suddenly, a shining pattern appeared on the huge rock, and then it split into 6 neat pieces. Inside, there were so many parangons of different colors. This was a miracle. Everyone kneeled on the ground and cheered. Amon was also surprised. All the parangons in the treasure were special parangons. They were the private collections of the chief priests of Duk. There were hundreds of them in total. The first thing that came to Amon's mind was not how much money he could exchange them for. The main materials for making all kinds of precious artifacts almost all needed special parangons. If he wanted to make those artifacts in the future, what he really lacked were other auxiliary materials. But these parangons could not be used to make artifacts. That would be a great waste. They were the wealth used to build the city. Amon put away all the parangons. That night, while the cavemen were dancing around the fire to celebrate, Link and Madanzo were discussing the next step in the temporary stone house. With this wealth, after a year and a half, the place would barely be able to accommodate explorers. Then they could hire craftsmen and caravans from the surrounding countries. Link felt that there were too few people here, and there were still small tribes of cavemen in the mountains. After the flood, they would have a hard time surviving. It would be better to send people to recruit them and integrate them into the city. Amon nodded in agreement. Link was the tribe leader and had a lot of experience in managing tribes. However, building a city from scratch was too much of a test for him. There were too many things to do. Madanzo was a warrior. He was good at training soldiers in combat, but he was also a layman in the construction of a city. It was not easy for them to get together to discuss the future. The current situation was still manageable, but they could only learn as they explored. They all deeply felt one thing, and that was that talents were hard to come by. Madanzo and Amon thought of 2 people at the same time. Titjo, the mayor of Arcade, and Usser, the chief of the Highland Giants. When Princess Sisela was kidnapped, Titjo organized the whole town to prepare the supplies requested by the Highland Giants in just 1.5 days. He also organized a rescue team to deliver the supplies to the designated place on time. This seemingly impossible task was accomplished without causing any disturbances in the town. This talent was appreciated by Princess Sisela and Prince Binut. He had been promoted to a more important position in the city of Kish. As for the mage Usser, he was not a simple person either. To be able to organize and coordinate the actions of the simple-minded, muscular Highlanders was not an ordinary mage. His mastery of magic might not be very high, but in a sense he was a talent even rarer than a supreme mage. It would be great if they had someone like Titjo or Usser by their side. Unfortunately, they could not find such a person for the time being. Madanzo suggested. Aesop is also a very capable man. He is like half a butler to Sayo. Sayo has shops in several cities, and often organizes caravans to travel between cities. Aesop manages them very well. It would be a pity to leave him in Montefiore to guard a manor. It would be best if we could get him here. Chapter 120. Link smiled and said, Ammonius, this place is still desolate, but I can already see a rich city in front of me. If Aesop is really such a talent, he will be a good financial officer or a farmer in the future. He will be a real lord. These are secondary. Building a new home on this fertile land. Every day there will be harvest, and every day you can witness new creations. As long as you have such a heart, life will be full of positive meaning. Madanzo smiled and punched him. You moved here from that damn place in the mountains, and the whole tribe cheered. Of course you will think so. Others may not. But what you said is indeed very reasonable. It seems that you did not learn from Ammonius in vain. Amon nodded and said, when I return to Montefiore this time, I will talk to Aesop about this. If he is willing, Madanzo, I will send you to escort him here. Since you have talked about this truth, I have a question to ask seriously. You have already achieved the 6th level of the power of 2 sides, and the test you are about to face is the fusion of faith. So please look at your heart. What is your real desire and the path you want to embark on? Don't tell me it is to become a supreme mage or a supreme warrior. That is just the result of the process. Both of them stopped laughing, and Link said seriously, my wish is very simple. It is to lead my people out of the mountains and build a peaceful home. I want to see this wasteland become a brand new city, and build a shrine for God Amon. I am the one who will witness and accomplish all of this with my own hands. Amon said with a smile. There is no hurry to build a temple. Wait until the first inner city wall has begun to take shape. Since you are willing to worship Morin, then build a statue for her. Link. Ammonius, what we want to build is your temple. Amon smiled. There is no hurry, just leave a place for me. Metatro replied with a straight face. I used to just want to restore my status as a noble and the title of my ancestors. But when I was finally able to do it, I realized that it wasn't the most sincere pursuit of my life. I am a man who is constantly searching and discovering. I have witnessed the miracle of Ammonius, and I just want to continue to witness and explore the ultimate existence of power. Amon smiled. Well then go and verify it. To break through to the 7th level, not only do you need to rely on the growth of power, the most important is the breakthrough of the mind. Madanzo will return to Igut with me tomorrow, and Link will continue to lead the people here. Amon didn't dare to leave all of the wealth he had obtained from Murin's treasure here. He only left a small portion for Link in case he needed it. The next day, he took Schrödinger and Madanzo away from the huge island surrounded by swamps, and set off again south through the wilderness. The return journey was different from the way they came. Madanzo had smoothly passed the trial, and Amon had also achieved the 7th level. Unknowingly, he had joined the ranks of the strongest on the continent. They did not encounter too many dangers along the way. When they came, they had almost figured out the general range of the various monsters. After crossing the inland lake and coming to the desert, they were not disturbed by the scorpions. Amon did not walk fast. This desolate and uninhabited place was the best place to demonstrate various high-level magic, which was what Madanzo, who had just achieved the 6th level, needed to learn. Amon himself was also practicing the 7th level of body arts. Only after fully mastering it would he be qualified to become a supreme warrior. What was the difference between a 7th level warrior and a 6th level warrior? Amon had a deep understanding that the power awakened in the blood could not only be stimulated from the inside out, but also be exerted to the extreme. It could even control the operation of the power in the environment. The power in the blood had become a way to stimulate energy, which was very similar to the effect of magic, or even the esoteric energy magic. There was a huge gap between a 6th level warrior and a 6th level mage. If it was not for a surprise attack in close quarters or a siege battle in a military formation, it would be difficult to defeat a mage of the same level who had mastered all kinds of magical means. But the gap between a 7th level warrior and a 7th level mage was obviously narrowed, and at least they could fight face to face. No wonder Enkidu was even willing to practice pure body arts. If he could reach the peak of this power, he would indeed not be afraid of any master. But warriors who could reach the level of Enkidu were too rare. After all, mages had more means, and magic was not only a manifestation of power. Along the way, Amon practiced the 7th level body arts while teaching Metatro various high-level magic arts. The two of them often sparred together, and occasionally fought off monsters that suddenly appeared. In terms of actual combat skills, after this long journey, both of them had improved by leaps and bounds, especially Amon. Although he did not seem to have changed much, he was already a rare master on the continent, not to mention that he had mastered the power of 2 sides. More than a month later, they returned to the territory of Igut and entered the Cape States. Because it was a secret mission, the two were still in disguise and did not greet the local authorities. It was during this time that Julian received a letter. The messenger gave the letter to the concierge and left without leaving any message. The contents of the letter were unknown to outsiders. But on the second night after Julian received the letter, a tragedy occurred in Cape. Fayal Judah, the clerk of Lord Roddick, hanged himself and left a suicide note, the content of which was full of repentance. In the note, Judas confessed that he was tempted by greed and bribed by Morton, the financial officer of Saya. Not only did he divulge the military and political secrets of the Cape States, but he also betrayed the secret agents sent to Cape States by the Temple of Isis. Judas' suicide note also mentioned another person, the financial officer of Saya, Morton. Judas had bribed Morton with a lot of money and obtained a lot of confidential information, which was praised by Roddick. But on the other hand, Judas had also accepted the bribe and divulged a lot of confidential military and political secrets that he knew. Neither of them was a good person, and the things they did were also very interesting. They bribed each other with a lot of money in exchange for information. The money used for bribery was the city's, but after such an exchange, it became their own, and they had both made contributions. It was indeed a business that brought both fame and fortune. At dawn, the servant found Judas' body hanging from the beam of the house. He had been dead for a long time. But one thing was puzzling. In addition to the handwritten suicide note on the table, there were also 30 silver coins at Judas' feet. Someone had written a line on the ground, "Return it to you." It seemed that after Judas' death, someone had quietly entered his room. Whether Judas committed suicide or was murdered, there were different opinions. Roddick was deeply enraged. The matter was eventually treated as suicide, but the governor of the city ordered a secret investigation to trace the person who wrote on the ground. But no clues were found. Only Julian knew how Judas died and vaguely guessed who the person who wrote was, but he did not mention it. Although the supreme mage understood in his heart, there was one thing that always puzzled him. Why would someone put 30 silver coins on Judas' body? What kind of symbolism was this? Although the matter was handled in private, it was not completely covered up. The city of Saya also had spies here. Through Judas' servant, they learned the contents of the suicide note, and the news spread back to Shmuel and Goliath. So Morton was taken down for questioning. Judas was dead and was implicated thousands of miles away, while Amon and Madanzo had left Cape States and returned to Montefiore. The first thing Amon did when he returned to Montefiore was to go to his manor and ask Aesop if he was willing to go to the wilderness to help the cavemen build their homes. Aesop readily agreed. He said to Amon, "I was originally a slave, and you gave me the identity of a free man. But the so-called freedom is not only about the bondage of identity, but also about being able to witness the traces of my own life, just like seeing the trajectory of the stars in the sky. I am looking forward to such a mission, in order to repay you, and also to examine myself. Master Allah, if you allow me, I also hope to make all of this into a story and sing it in the world." Amon was slightly startled, then smiled and said, "I know you like to tell stories. The legends of the continent and the past of the gods have all been made up by you. You are telling the world in your eyes and the wishes of your heart. If what I do will also become a story made up by people, you can tell it in the future if you want." During the time Amon was away, Aesop not only took care of the manor in good order, but also used the money left by Amon to lead the servants to do business and make a lot of money. Although Amon did not care about the money, it showed that Aesop was very capable. He sent Madanzo to escort Aesop to Link first, and then returned to Montefiore to meet him. After everything was arranged, he returned to the Temple of Isis to report, while Schrödinger was still mingling with the cats outside the temple. It had been half a year since Amon left Montefiore, and the guard captain of the temple archives had been replaced by a new person. He still lived in the original small courtyard, and for the time being, he only received a salary but had nothing to do. The adoratress soon summoned him, and the location was still the study where she usually handled affairs. After greeting him according to the etiquette, Maria once again asked the servants to leave. This time, without the adoratress' special instruction, Gabriel took the initiative to go out and close the door. Anyway, every time Maria saw Amon, she always wanted to talk to him alone. When Gabriel went out, he looked back at Amon meaningfully, with a look of inquiry and admiration in his eyes. When the two were alone, it had become a habit or a tacit understanding. They did not speak for a period of time, just looking at each other. In front of the adoratress, according to etiquette, Amon could not take the initiative to speak. After a long time, Maria said quietly, "Amon, you have changed again." Amon smiled slightly. "Why don't you recognize me?" Chapter 121. The Source of Life. It was a simple sentence, but it revealed too many unspoken meanings. It also revealed Maria's longing and worries. Because of this, when he appeared in front of her, she felt that he was particularly clear and real. Even this silent gaze was especially valuable. I felt the same way. After returning from a long journey, he saw Maria again. The one sitting in front of him was the real echo in his heart. In the past, whenever he saw Maria, he would be in a trance. He couldn't tell whether she was the holy maiden of the Temple of Isis, or the young echo he met in Duk. There was always an indescribable conflict in his heart. But now he could finally see clearly. She was her, the echo in his heart, and the holy maiden in front of him. I didn't want to tell her that on the night when he killed the two-headed serpent and climbed to the other side of the lake, he saw her in his meditation. It wasn't a dream. It was as if it had happened in reality. They returned to the tower in the town of Duk. They were no longer the same as before. He was the present Aya, and she was the present Maria. But I hugged her just like he did in the past. He held her in his arms, caressed her, and really kissed her. When the sun rose the next day, I opened his eyes and smiled. When he stood up, the inexplicable entanglement in his heart had been relieved. He looked at the world under the sun calmly. At this moment, Ah's smile was as bright as the sun. He smiled and said, "Holy Maiden, I have two things to report to you this time." Maria also looked at him. The luster in her eyes was like the starry sky in the silent night. "I was waiting for you to say it." First of all, I have investigated the topography of the area around the original site of Duk, and recorded the information to the priest committee of the shrine. Maria nodded with satisfaction. "I have read your report. The description of the topography is exactly the same as the results of other investigations. You also made a sand table and made a detailed demonstration. The most important thing is the distribution of various monsters. Your investigation is the most detailed. You had to travel through those places on foot to get valuable information. This is worthy of special praise. High Priest George has already made a request to reward you, but I have temporarily suppressed this report and did not reply to it. It is not that I do not want to praise you, but the contents of the report are not enough to reward you for your achievements." What about the second thing you want to say? Is it related to your personal training? I nodded. "Yes, as you expected. I have become a 7th level Supreme Warrior." Maria smiled, a pure and happy smile. "Many people can see it, but you didn't say it yourself. Did you want to be the first to tell me?" According to past practices, the city will hold a celebration ceremony for you, and you will also receive the status of a noble of the Egyptian Empire. Go back and prepare well. What do I need to prepare? Maria thought for a moment and smiled again. "After I came to the shrine, you are the first subordinate to be promoted to a Supreme Warrior. In fact, there is nothing to prepare. I know your name is but you still need an official title. Not only must it be recorded in the register of the nobles of the city, but also in the awakening ceremony of the power of the shrine." I was slightly startled, and immediately reacted. "The second awakening ceremony of power? I am allowed to learn hieroglyphs and practice magic at the same time?" It was rare for the Holy Lady to show a bit of playfulness. "Yes, I have already arranged it. It is up to you whether you can achieve this achievement. The second awakening of power is not necessarily successful, and only supreme mages can hold such a ceremony. I allow you to make a request and choose any supreme mage in the Temple of Isis to preside over the ceremony for you as a special reward. Will you choose Vord, the 9th level supreme mage with the highest achievement, or me, who has just become a 7th level supreme mage? I have to remind you that the higher the achievement of the supreme mage, the greater the possibility of success in the ceremony, But the most important thing is whether you can awaken the power bestowed by the gods. It requires a process, and the ceremony is just a symbol, like the opening of a door. I have never presided over it, and I have no experience. I replied without thinking. Everything has a beginning. I am honored to ask the Holy Lady to preside over the second awakening ceremony for me. This is the first time you have presided over such a ceremony, which makes me feel even more honored. Maria kept smiling, her eyes like a pair of crescent moons. Well, it's settled then. I will preside over the second awakening ceremony for you. I hope it will be successful. I stood up and saluted. Thank you, Holy Lady, it will definitely be successful. At this moment, when he called her Holy Lady, he was as calm as when he called Iko. He could guarantee that the ceremony would be successful, because I was already a supreme mage. As long as he went through this ceremony, he would be able to use many magic spells, and people would only praise the magic of the Holy Lady. However, he was also very interested in the second awakening ritual of this power. Perhaps he could learn a lot from it for the cultivation of the power of two sides. When he was about to leave, Maria stood up and asked again. Have you carefully read the ancient books I asked you to read? She was referring to the military books and information related to the Legion's operations. I nodded. Yes, in addition to the catalog you gave me, I also tried to find relevant documents to study. I simulated and deduced in my mind for a long time. Maria said again, it's not enough to just memorize them. You also have to think about how to use them. You were able to travel through such a wasteland, and you have learned so many military books. I believe you should have experience commanding troops in various environments. I said thoughtfully. Holy Lady, are you implying something to me? Maria replied with a deep meaning. You will soon understand. If you want to establish a meritorious deed that can pardon your clansmen, success or failure depends on this. A few days later, the Lord of Montefiore, Jehudi Hotep, personally held a celebration ceremony for Ah and issued an announcement. The people heard the good news. The glorious warrior of the Temple of Isis, Ah was promoted to a 7th-level supreme warrior. The name given to him by his drunkard father, Allaha Sumasaya Hovanliate, was finally put to use for the first time, and was even written in the temple's register by the priests. But this long list of titles was too difficult to remember, so people still called him the Great Warrior. The one who was most happy about this news was not Ah himself, but his friend, the merchant Osayu. Osayu said excitedly to everyone he met. My vision was absolutely right. I knew that I would become a true noble. Today, he really became a respectable supreme warrior. When he was drunk, he often bragged to his friends. Ah Lord, I once said that I have the hope of becoming a noble in the future. His friends laughed at him and said, forget it. Why do you think you're so fat? Do you still want to practice body arts and become a supreme warrior with such a fat appearance? Shortly after the celebration ceremony, Ah went through another ceremony in a hall of the Temple of Isis. The host was the noble Holy Lady, who awakened the power bestowed upon him by the gods. According to common sense, this ceremony was almost impossible to succeed, because Ah was not a devout believer in the gods in front of him. He only examined his heart, and silently looked at Iko, who was holding a magic staff. Because the ceremony was presided over by the Holy Lady herself, it was quite grand. Ah first had to bathe in incense, put on a beautiful and mighty armor, put on a good weapon, salute the gods, offer sacrifices, and accept the people's congratulations. When Ah walked to the ceremony hall, the warriors lined up on both sides of the long stairs sprinkled lotus petals, while the priests in the temple sang in unison. Maria stood in front of the altar with a golden crown on her head and a magic staff in her hand. When the ceremony officially began, Maria gently raised the Holy Lady's magic staff. Her movements were indescribably noble and elegant, and her mouth sang a poem praising the goddess of Isis. The staff emitted a soft golden light that enveloped Ah, who was kneeling in front of the altar. This was the blessing of Isis magic. Maria first comforted Ah's body and mind, letting him feel the magic in peace. Then the golden light began to flicker and hover, surrounding Ah's body like a floating veil. There were changes in brightness and density. This was the most basic magic. When the magic power was released, it guided Ah into a calm state of meditation. Maria's voice sounded in Ah's mind. Please let go of all worries and hesitation. Forget all worries and sorrow. Sincerely pray to God. Implore God to grant you strength. When you enter a calm state of meditation, close your eyes and gaze at the majestic image of God. It was like a ray of light rising from the eastern horizon, spreading its grace everywhere. This light dispels the darkness, the earth awakens from its slumber, and the world is no longer lost. Please open your heart to receive it, and absorb the strength bestowed by God. You will awaken in the mist, spread your wings and fly. Ah didn't resist Maria's guidance. When the blessing of Isis enveloped him, Ah completely opened his heart and entered a calm and clear state of meditation. Although he wasn't a believer of Isis, he didn't have a trace of contempt in his heart. He integrated his beliefs into Maria's devotion and carefully experienced it. Chapter 122. The world outside the body seemed to have a soul, and heaven and earth breathed in and out, with a vivid breath. How to communicate with it with one's own body and mind was the source of power given by the gods, and it was also the source of the various magical methods of the mages. Amon forgot that he was already a supreme mage, and as if welcoming a new life at dawn, he went to re-experience the source of power. Amon seemed to see the energy of the rhythm of life between heaven and earth. He wanted to grasp a ray of inspiration in this ceremony and integrate it with his own body and mind. In the future, he would be able to find this state alone in meditation. This was the second awakening of power. Indeed, only supreme mages could hold such a ceremony for a warrior. Maria's ceremony for Amon took almost twice as long as usual. She was not stingy with her mind and magic power. In the eyes of outsiders, this was also the first time that the adoratress had held a second awakening of power. Of course, she had to familiarize herself with the process. Warriors generally did not awaken the power given by the gods immediately after the ceremony. They still had to practice the most basic magic meditation and find the state that they were guided into during the ceremony on their own. This kind of ceremony was usually held only once, and it was also a considerable consumption for a supreme mage. If the first time was not successful, in theory, although it could still be done again, the chance of success was already very small. No supreme mage would repeatedly struggle for a warrior. Even if the effect of holding the ceremony again was already very small, Maria did not seem to mind giving Amon a few more chances. A few days after the ceremony, she sent someone to ask Amon if he could feel the awakened power in the state of meditation. Amon replied, "Thank you for your concern, adoratress. I have succeeded." After hearing the news, Maria immediately gave an order to the high priest George to send a teacher to teach Amon Egyptian hieroglyphs. Amon had to pretend to learn the hieroglyphs of Igut again. The teacher praised Amon for his incomparable intelligence and mastery of hieroglyphs in the shortest time. People were not surprised by this. Becoming a supreme warrior at a young age, how could Amon not be a talented and intelligent person? Moreover, if one mastered the writing of the secular language, learning the hieroglyphs was actually not too difficult. One only needed to understand the special and complicated rules within it. The shrine had also specially sent 2 5th-level mages to guide Amon in his practice of low-level magic. As a great sorcerer, Amon appeared to be quite modest. He listened very carefully and did not put on airs. However, he also rarely asked questions. In short, he was a very fast learner, and it didn't take long for him to come into contact with the content of advanced magic. The 2 5th-level mages found it difficult to continue teaching Amon, so they went back to report to their superiors and asked for another teacher for the supreme warrior Amon. As a result, Crazy Ol's old friend George, who was now the high priest of the Temple of Isis, said, "Let me personally guide the supreme warrior Amon." George took over the task, but he did not teach Amon any magic. He only gave him the authority to read all the magic books in the archives, and if there was something he did not understand, he could ask. The high priest was usually very busy and could not specially teach Amon magic. The archives was under the jurisdiction of George, and Amon was very familiar with the place, so there was no need for him to waste time on teaching. With this convenient condition, Amon could finally find a chance to read another book that Schrödinger had asked him to read. However, before he could do so, he was entangled by another matter. It was very sudden. The adoratress personally ordered the unemployed supreme warrior Amon to live alone in a spacious courtyard with a meditation room. He was to bathe and pray for the next few days and not go out. If he wanted to read any books, he was to write down a list and ask the servants to bring it to him. She asked him to wait quietly for the messenger from the capital of Igut. Something important was about to happen. The adoratress sent some military books to Amon. These were all books Amon had read before, but Maria wanted him to review them again. At the same time, various military exercise props were also sent, including the topographic map of the Empire of Igut, various models of marching and encampment, and even the drawings and models of supply and transport ships at sea, so that Amon could familiarize himself with the books. Maria's move was clearly a hint that the capital would send someone to test Amon. If the supreme warrior Amon could pass this test, he would soon receive a very important appointment. In all likelihood, he would become a general in the army. If this was the case, it meant that the war around the town of Duk was about to begin. The actual situation was even more shocking than Amon's speculation. Maria recommended Amon, not as an ordinary general, but as the head of a newly formed legion. The Empire of Igut already had 3 legions ready to go. According to custom, the legions were named after the gods, including the most elite Horus Legion and the Legion of Isis. The Legion of Set, as an outpost, had already assembled at the border of Cape States. The head of the Legion of Set was Roddick, the governor of the Cape States, and the chief priest of the legion was the 8th-level Supreme Mage Julian. Normally, the head of an imperial legion should be at least a supreme warrior, but as the governor of Cape, Roddick was more suitable to manage the legion. The Legion of Set was mainly responsible for the logistical management of the army, base supplies, and the transportation of food and fodder. The necessary war supplies had been stockpiled at the front lines of Cape through various channels. The pharaoh had sent a supreme warrior from the capital, Peter Machen, to be the commander of the front lines. The real elites of the empire were the Horus Legion from the capital, and the Legion of Isis from Montefiore. The head of the Legion of Isis was Ankh, the chief supreme warrior of the Temple of Isis. The chief priest was the 9th-level Supreme Mage Vord, and the commander of the front lines was the supreme warrior Ryushin. The chief priest of the Horus Legion was Ricard, the high priest of the Horus Temple of Igut. The commander of the front lines was the 8th-level Supreme Warrior Van Verts, and the head of the legion was the pharaohs of Igut himself. Lazith too, who loved grandiosity and success, was going to lead the legion himself. An entire legion had 5,000 warriors and 50 priests. This was the combat force that was officially put into the battlefield. The daily consumption of supplies was as high as a mountain. If the servants and civilian workers were included, there would be at least 20,000 people providing various logistical services around the legion. These 3 legions were, of course, not all the military forces of the Empire of Igut, but it was impossible to launch an expedition without the strength of the whole country. This time, the strongest elites of the empire had been dispatched. Pharaoh would personally lead the expedition, leaving a legion in the capital city of Thebes to guard the northwestern border of the empire. The adoratress would also stay in Montefiore, and there would be a garrison legion here. If one wanted to directly capture the Hittite kingdom, the most convenient route would be to set off from Montefiore, go to sea along the Nile River, and land there. But Pharaoh's purpose this time was to establish a strategic base in the area where the town of Duk used to be. So he chose to set off from the Cape States and attack by land through the desert. According to the plan formulated by the military council, in addition to the 3 main legions mentioned above, another legion was needed to advance together, which was a newly formed miscellaneous legion called the Anare Legion. An and Ra were the names of the same god, the head of the Ennead worshipped by the people of Igut. It was said that he was the father of the gods and was born in the lotus of the beginning, and also the oldest god of the sun. He had many titles. He was called An at night, Ra during the day, Hepri in the morning, Adam at night. Amongst the Ennead, his title was also Nuvan. According to the understanding of the human world, although this god was the oldest and was known as the father of the gods, he was not the most important god worshipped by the empire of Igut. In ancient myths and legends, the goddess Isis defeated Anare with a trick, obtained the secrets of this god, and gained greater power. Horus, the son of the goddess Isis, later became the king god worshipped by the people of Igut, and was also the most important god among the Ennead. It was said that the ancient god Anare had retired to the source of the Nile River. Interestingly, in the long list of names of Ammon, there was also the name, Anare, which could be understood as night and day. The Anare legion would not converge with the main army. It would follow along the northern coastline while Pharaoh's army advanced. On the one hand, it would act as a flank support, and on the other hand, its main task was to prevent the Hittite kingdom's army from landing on the sea and cutting off the main army's supply line. The strategic position of such a legion was very awkward. If Pharaoh won a complete victory, it would not make the most important contribution. If Pharaoh was defeated and retreated, the Anare legion would need to leave the coastline and advance, desperately resisting the pursuers to cover Pharaoh. If the Hittite kingdom really did make a large detour along the coastline, the legion would be cannon fodder before the main army counterattack. But the biggest possibility was that the legion would always be responsible for the task of covering and guarding along the coastline, a march of thousands of miles, and would not participate in the real decisive battle of the main force. As long as this mission was completed, the legion would be considered to have made a contribution to the empire, and the illustrious lords would naturally be unwilling to accept such a difficult task. So the saintess took the opportunity to recommend Ammon. But after all, this involved the appointment of a legion commander, and the empire had to be cautious in handing over 5,000 soldiers to Ammon. So they organized a special assessment. Ammon lived alone in the courtyard for more than 10 days, and was finally invited to the government office in Montefiore, where he met a few prominent ministers of the empire. 7 people sat in a semicircle in a large hall, and in the middle was the saintess Maria. On the left of Maria was the military minister Isin from the capital Thebes, and beside Isin was the high priest Suska from the main shrine of the capital Horus. On the left of Suska was the mayor of Montefiore, Dietitian. On the right of Maria were the 3 high priests of the temple of Isis, Vord, Burke, and George. These lords formed a temporary assessment committee, and it was up to them to decide whether or not to appoint Ammon as the legion commander of the Anare legion. P.S. When I was preparing the offerings for the night, I opened a box of exquisite mooncakes, and was surprised to find that it was filled with monthly tickets. Ha 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 ha, it's the festival, just kidding. Chapter 123. Ammon did not have a seat. After saluting the lords one by one, he stood in the middle of the hall and waited for the questions. The first to ask was Isin, the Minister of Military Affairs of the Empire, who was also a head of a legion in his early years, and had a lot of experience in military campaigns. He asked Ammon many questions, and the young supreme warrior answered them fluently. Lord Isin also ordered people to bring maps, sand tables, and various military instruments for Ammon to simulate on the spot how to organize troops, arrange battle formations, and other actual combat commands. Ammon also did a good job without any flaws. The assessment went on for a whole day, and continued after lunch. The high priest of the capital, Suska, played a game of chess with Ammon, using a real military sand table. The result was also very satisfactory. The assessment continued the next morning, and the 7 lords asked all kinds of questions, some of which were beyond the scope of military operations. Ammon tried his best to answer all of them, and then took his orders and left to wait for the results. The 7 lords began to discuss, but Maria did not speak. The final opinion was 3-3, with the number of people in favor and against being equal. Those who agreed with Ammon were Isin, Vord, and George, while those who opposed were Suska, Dietitian, and Burke. The main reason for the opposition was that Ammon had no experience in commanding a battle, and the main reason was because of his background. Ammon used to be a resident of the town of Duk, a dependency of the Hittite kingdom. It was doubtful whether he could guarantee absolute loyalty to the empire of Igut in a battle. The two sides were at a stalemate, and in the end, it still depended on the opinion of the adoratress. Maria pondered and said, "After these 2 days of assessment, there is no longer any doubt whether Amon is suitable to be the head of the NRA Legion. We all know very well that this legion will not participate in the real battle of the main forces, but only carry out coordinated vigilance and cover missions. Amon is completely qualified for this position. Does anyone have any objections to this?" The other 6 did not object. Maria continued, "As for whether this person is loyal or not, haven't you heard of his deeds? His conduct is proof enough of his noble character, and that is why I recommend him. This man was indeed a miner from Duk. He was the one who offered the gods Tyr and returned Nero's belongings. I'm sure you all know what happened to Duk, don't you? Moreover, his clansmen were all under the control of the empire. According to the latest news, the king of Hittite claimed to have received an oracle from Enlil. Everyone should have heard of this oracle, right? If you were Amon, what would you think?" There was also an interlude regarding the latest developments in the Hittite kingdom. According to the king of Hittite Wuxia and the Hittite Academy, Enlil had sent down the latest oracle. He used his divine power to launch the Great Flood, not only to punish and expel the sinners, but also to cleanse the land of sin, and to give the people thousands of miles of fertile land. It would become a land blessed by the gods, and the people would be told to cultivate the fertile land and build a prosperous and happy home. The oracle was conveyed to all parts of the kingdom, and the people were excited, especially the unemployed, wandering explorers and farmers of some of the barren cities of the empire. People flooded into the shrine to thank Enlil for his blessing, and vowed to cultivate the fertile land given by the gods as a sacred cause. The altar was filled with flowers and all kinds of precious tributes, and everyone was praising the greatness, mercy, and solemnity of the gods. In the midst of this uproar, there was a group of forgotten people who could only silently grieve. They were the original miners of Duk. They were already sinners punished by the gods and hated by the people of the kingdom. Whether the dead were innocent or guilty, they no longer knew anything. But what about the descendants who were still alive in the world? How did they feel? It was impossible for Amon to return to the kingdom of Enlil. Even if he wanted to, there was no place for him there. Besides, the surviving people of Duk were all in the empire of Igut. Amon could not and had no reason to betray the empire. In fact, not only Enlil had received the oracle, but not long ago, the pharaohs of Igut and the high priests of the main shrine of Horus also received the oracle of King Horus. The great god Horus declared that in the center of the continent, there would be 1,000 miles of fertile land, a symbol of the cruelty and evil of the foreign gods, and a brand new territory for the great empire of Igut to establish its eternal glory. He called on his people to go there and build a home for the people of Igut and build a real shrine, so that the glory of the gods could shine on the continent. This oracle became the supreme decree of Lazarus II to launch the war, and Pharaoh himself decided to lead the army himself. He had been planning this war for a long time. To be able to open up a brand new territory in the center of the continent was the greatest ambition of Pharaoh's life. This oracle had not been officially released to the people of Igut, but when the army officially set out, it would spread throughout the country. At that time, the people of Igut would also rush into the shrines to cheer, praising the holiness and greatness of the gods and Pharaoh. The situation was just like what Goliath said to Amon. It can be foreseen that there will also be disputes between the gods, and people will drive their own desires in the name of the gods. The adoratress mentioned the oracle of the foreign god Enlil and the past of the town of Duk, and no one could refute her. Perhaps to dispel the doubts in everyone's hearts, Maria looked around and said with a smile, "In fact, you don't have to worry too much. Although the head of the legion is the highest officer of the legion, according to the law of the empire, the chief priest of the legion has the responsibility of supervising the army and supervising the war. If the head of the legion wants to transfer the chief priest, he must also get the approval of the chief priest. We only need to choose a trustworthy supreme mage to be the chief priest of the legion, and it will be foolproof." At this time, the high priest of the temple of Isis, George, smiled bitterly and said, "Marching to war is a hard job for supreme mages, let alone the chief priest of the NRA Legion. It is either just a decoration or a thankless task, and I don't think many people will be willing to do it. Thank you, the Adoratress, for your trust and promotion, for recommending me as the High Priest of the Temple of Isis. This time, I volunteer to be the Chief Priest of the NRA Legion. I don't have any other requests. I just hope that the Ministry of Military Affairs, the Ministry of Finance, and the City of Montefiore can give me enough support, and not dismiss a miscellaneous army with a casual attitude. The matter was thus settled, and Amon officially became the head of the Legion of the Empire. Although it was only a temporary miscellaneous army, his status was still there, and his status was equivalent to that of the deputy governor of a city. The following days were very busy for Amon. After taking office, there was a lot of work to deal with, and he even regretted sending Aesop away so early. In formal battles, the head of the Legion usually could not directly go to the front line to fight. He was the commander of the whole army, and an accident could easily cause the entire front line to collapse. Therefore, there was a need for a vanguard commander to fight on the front line, and now this position was also vacant. Maria let Amon choose himself, and if he really could not find a suitable person, she agreed to send Gabriel. From this, it could be seen that His Majesty Pharaoh did not attach much importance to the NRA Legion, although the military council had formulated a march plan of coordinated operations, flanking guard and covering. But in Pharaoh's mind, this miscellaneous army was actually dispensable, and the army led by him would be invincible. But Amon himself could not ignore it. Gabriel was Maria's most important helper, and naturally, he could not easily take Gabriel away. Moreover, this supreme guardian had a high status, and Amon could not command him at will. After all, Amon still lacked enough foundation and prestige, and it was difficult to find a vanguard commander who was completely loyal and obedient to him. After thinking for a long time, Amon submitted an application to the city of Montefiore, recommending and promoting a person. It was the captain of the guards of Mount Horeb, the 6th-level warrior John, who had been punished and sent out. As the supreme commander of the Legion, although he could not only rely on personal force to win the battle, in the minds of the soldiers, the personal strength and charm of the commander were still part of the prestige. Therefore, the head of the Legion was usually held by a supreme warrior, and the situation like Roddick was only a special case. Amon was already a supreme warrior, but he had not really shown his strength, so it was difficult to convince the noble generals who were born in the Igut. The captain of the guards of Mount Horeb, John, was an exception. He had long been obedient to Amon, and he had also been taught and guided by Amon. This time, it was Amon's recommendation that promoted him from the desolate Mount Horeb to the Legion, so naturally he was willing to listen to orders. In addition to the vanguard commander, Amon had another task that he had to deal with himself, and that was to form a personal guard. There was such a structure in the Legion, but it had to be built by the commander himself. There were not many personal guards, but they were the most elite force, and their duty was to protect the commander himself. Whether it was charging to kill the enemy or breaking out of the encirclement to escape, the personal guard had to follow the commander closely. The captain of the personal guard was also directly appointed by the commander himself, and others had no right to command. The personal guards were equivalent to a small independent private army, numbering no more than 100 people. Although they were also provided with weapons and pay by the army commander would often pay out of his own pocket to equip them with better weapons, and they would also receive more generous rewards. After all, this was related to the safety of Amon himself. Personal guards not only needed to be absolutely loyal, but also had the courage to risk their lives to protect the commander. If it were other officers, there would be various conditions and restrictions on the appointment, but the appointment of the captain of the personal guard was decided by the commander himself, and no one would interfere, even if he hired a wandering warrior. Because of this, Amon directly appointed Medanzo, a wandering warrior from Babylon, as the captain of the personal guard. As for the members of the personal guard, Medanzo would be selected from the soldiers of the Legion. The great merchant of Montefiore, Sio, finally met the newly promoted Legion commander, Sir Amon. Amon brought Medanzo to visit personally, which made Sio feel flattered, and he was so excited that he stuttered. Amon came to reminisce about the old days, and at the same time, he also brought the warrant of the mayor of Montefiore, appointing Sayo as the logistics officer of the NRA Legion. Amon even smiled and asked Sayo if he was willing to accept the position. Sayo's face turned red, and his head nodded like a chick pecking on rice. He stuttered, "Yes, I'm very willing, Sir Amon. I've been looking forward to this day for a long time. You really haven't forgotten me." Sayo was not a fool, and he was very clear that it was difficult for a commoner merchant to have a noble status, no matter how rich he was. This was the best opportunity of his life. Although there was a certain risk in organizing the logistics of the Legion, it would not be more dangerous than the soldiers at the front lines. As long as he made contributions, and was recommended by the Legion commander, he might be granted a noble status by the pharaohs of Igut. Glory was only one aspect, and it would be much more convenient for him to do business in the future. In the Legion, there was naturally a logistics officer officially appointed by the Empire, who was responsible for the handover, statistics, and distribution of supplies. Amon appointed Sayo to be the logistics officer, and his main responsibility was to organize the caravans and caravans outside the Legion, and follow the Legion to transport supplies. He was very clear that this merchant had no other abilities, but he was very good at this business. With the order of the pharaoh, the merchants of each city had to obey the distribution of supplies for the march. Sayo happened to be very familiar with this, and he was also the most suitable candidate that Amon could find. Being a logistics officer was a lucrative job. During times of war, he had the right to requisition military supplies from the cities along the way, and after the war, the Empire's financial department would settle the accounts. It was needless to say that the profits were plentiful. Sayo was very grateful to Amon, and according to the custom, he presented a large sum of money to Amon on the spot. This time he was generous and not stingy. After all, wool comes from the sheep, and he could earn back many times more in the future. In terms of wealth, Amon was not short of money at all, so he refused on the spot with a smile. When Sayo saw that Amon did not accept it, he was so anxious that his forehead was sweating. After a long time of begging, the guard captain Madanzo finally nodded and agreed to accept the gift, mainly to equip the head's personal guards with better armor and weapons. These should have been paid for by Amon himself, but Sayo generously did it for him. As soon as all the preparations were ready, Amon received the Empire's order to lead the NRA Legion to set off. With 50 mages and 5,000 warriors, he marched along the east bank of the Nile towards the sea. The logistics team was divided into two parts. A small part was the convoy responsible for daily supplies, while the majority was loaded onto ships and sailed along the Nile to follow the army on land. The Legion also sent warships to escort them. Although it was just a miscellaneous army that was not valued, it still looked majestic and mighty on the road. The 80 guards of Amon were all armored cavalry, while the 5,000 warriors were composed of charioteers, archers, and heavy infantry with javelins and shields. John led the cavalry in front, while the light infantry phalanxes brought up the rear. Looking from afar, the reflection of weapons and armors under the sun formed a sea of stars. Sitting in the spacious and comfortable chariot, Amon was quite emotional. When he first came to Montefiore, he was chased all the way and almost died by the Nile. But now, when he left, he had become a commander commanding thousands of soldiers. The one he should really thank was Maria. It was her who silently helped him get to where he was today. Amon had no intention of fighting against the army of the Hittite kingdom, but this war was inevitable whether he participated or not. He only wanted to make enough contributions to pardon the Dutians and lead them back to their homeland in the future. Amon knew very well that for the time being, what they could fight for in this war was not the thousands of miles of fertile land. It would take at least a year and a half for the swamps around the town of Duk to completely reseed to accommodate the army. The pharaoh of Egypt was somewhat impatient to launch an expedition at this time. However, judging from the strategic layout, the pharaoh's purpose was to establish a base at the inland lake first, so that he could occupy a favorable position in future disputes. As the flood receded completely, he could take over the entire fertile land and make it the new territory of the empire. The pharaohs of Igut, Lazith II, was full of confidence. The strength of the Empire of Igut was also recognized by all countries. The outcome of this war seemed to be without doubt. Although Amon was in the army of the Empire of Igut, he was not optimistic about the victory of Igut. The reason was simple. He felt that Lazith II seemed to underestimate this war too much. This was a matter of life and death for so many people, but in the eyes of Lazith II, it was like a game. Lord Pharaoh did not know what the enemy thought of Amon, but at least Lazith II did not pay enough attention to the coordination of the NRA Legion. It was like throwing a tank that was about to fall apart and letting the Legion follow him into battle. And it was only after Amon had assembled all the parts on the tank that it could operate normally. Pharaoh thought that he was unstoppable and that it was enough to lead the most elite army to victory. But in such an important war between countries, his carelessness in this aspect had exposed many problems. If Amon was the commander of the entire army, he would never treat the NRA Legion so carelessly, even if the status of the Legion was not very important. The speed of the Legion did not depend on how fast the carriages and horses could run, but whether the logistics and supplies could keep up. The supplies of the NRA Legion mainly relied on ships. Although the transport ships were equipped with long oars, the main power at sea was still the sails. The Legion advanced steadily according to the established route. Amon did not waste the opportunity to march along the coastline. Although it was unlikely that he would participate in the main battle, he did not forget to drill along the way. The coordination between the charioteers, archers, javelin throwers, cavalry and infantry was something that Amon had learned in military books and practiced on the sand table, but he had never commanded a real battle formation. During a break in the march, Amon ordered the generals to command their soldiers to take turns to drill, and he brought Madanzo to watch the actual battle. The NRA Legion had just been formed, and the previous training was very lax. But to become an official soldier of the Empire, the minimum requirement was to be a level 1 swordsman who had practiced physical skills. When these people really fought together, they should be quite strong. There was a custom in the army of the Empire of Igut, or rather, a tradition. The supplies and provisions allocated by the Ministry of Military Affairs would be intercepted by the commanding officer according to a certain proportion, and the rest would be distributed to the soldiers. Needless to say, military supplies could also be sold for a lot of money on the market. This money was for the personal use of the commanding officer, such as equipping his personal guards, rewarding military achievements in his own name, bribing the enemy, and so on. Under normal circumstances, the conventional rule was 30%, and the remaining 70% would be distributed to the soldiers below. That would be considered the full amount. But for the miscellaneous legions that were not valued, the quality of the equipment and the quantity of the troops could not compare to the elite legions of the Empire, and the proportion of the interception ratio was usually much higher. This would create a vicious cycle, and the combat effectiveness of the legion would be even lower. Chapter 124. On the one hand, Amon did this because he had just taken control of the legion and needed to win over the people and stabilize their morale. On the other hand, he was not short of money. In addition to the head of the legion, there was also the chief priest. The chief priest had 50 mages under his command, and they were treated very well. Amon himself was very honest, but he did not ask the chief priest George to suffer with him. The resources and salaries that belonged to the priests were all allocated to Edu to handle on his own. As a result, George also distributed all the supplies and equipment, leaving only 10% of the soldiers' salaries, completely following Amon's practice. As the high priest of the Temple of Isis, there were plenty of opportunities for George to fish for benefits, so there was no need to make a fuss in this regard. The equipment and salaries were sufficient. But Amon was not lenient in the training of the soldiers. He intended to be strict with the army, but he met a commander who was even stricter than him. John was known for his bad temper when he was on Mount Horeb. Now that he had come to the legion to lead the soldiers to war, how could he tolerate the soldiers being lazy? Whoever did not put in their best effort during the drill would be dragged out by the frontline commander and given a good beating, bypassing the lower-ranking officers. On the contrary, Amon played the role of leniency, often persuading John not to be too harsh, and to deal with the soldiers according to the normal military discipline. Amon also told John not to be too impatient, and not to increase the burden of the soldiers. For example, if the archers were required to shoot 15 arrows in a row in a battle formation, then they would shoot 15 arrows during the drill. There was no need to force them to shoot 20 arrows. In the end, they would lose their accuracy and strength. After all, they were still on the march and needed to rest and build up their strength. Under Amon's guidance on Mount Horeb, John was gradually able to control the irrepressible agitation, but the power of agitation did not disappear. When they met again, the 6th-level warrior had become stronger than before. There were still times when he was irritated and impulsive, but he found a way to turn this agitation into an explosion of power, and he could suddenly enter a more powerful, flexible, and perceptive state. This seemed to be a strange, explosive awakening of power, which was a very interesting discovery for Amon. Amon had tested this explosive power of John. When he entered this state, even Madanzo did not dare to face it head-on. If Amon didn't use magic and only used martial arts, he would only be able to suppress it. In this state, John became stronger than usual, but after this state ended, he would also become weaker than usual and would need to rest for a period to recover. According to Amon's analysis, if Hardadef used too much of this explosive power, it might cause unpredictable damage to his body and mind, which reminded him to be more careful. In addition to strict requirements and proper command, there were 2 other conditions to achieve the best results. The first was diet and nutrition, which Amon ordered the quartermaster to absolutely guarantee. The fleet organized by Sayo provided sufficient dairy and meat products. The other condition was the cooperation of the mages. Mages would not directly rush to the front line in the battle. Their role was mainly reflected in 2 aspects. One was to use a variety of magic to assist the soldiers in fighting, and the other was to improve the morale of the army. Magic could not only be offensive but also supportive. For example, although healing magic could not immediately heal the wounds of the soldiers, it could temporarily make them forget the pain. Blessings magic could make the soldiers braver and no longer fear. Some brilliant spiritual magic could even give the soldiers a belief that they would win, and encourage them to risk their lives in the battle. This was very important in the battle of a large legion. Often the defeat of a battle was not because of the number of soldiers killed or wounded, but because the morale of the troops collapsed. Because once the soldiers lost confidence, they would not have the courage to fight anymore. Despair would infect each other, and the commanders would not be able to control it. These mages were used to living like princes. Marching was already a hardship for them, so they generally wouldn't use this force unless it was a real battle. But Amon asked the mages to play a third role outside of the battlefield, which was to form a formation to cast healing magic and blessings during training, so that the soldiers could recover from fatigue and constantly improve their morale, to maintain a confident and excited state of battle. Amon could not directly command the mages. He had to give orders through Lord George. The chief priest, George, was very cooperative. According to Amon's request, he divided the mages under him into 4 teams, each team of 12 mages. They would form a magic formation, and take turns to help Amon train the soldiers every day. This made it hard for the mages. Their magic was very precious. How could they use it so casually? Lords of very high status occasionally used this method to train their soldiers, but it was almost unheard of in the whole legion. The mages complained incessantly after a few days. They went to Lord George to complain. It was not a real battle. How could they, the noble mages, be allowed to consume magic for the civilian warriors? George did not say anything at first. Later, seeing that there were too many complaining mages, he made a stunning decision. The supreme mage came to the training ground with his staff in hand. For 4 days in a row, he led 4 different teams of mages to cast magic and train the soldiers. Even Lord George did this himself. The other mages did not dare to complain openly. At this time, George said publicly, "Our legion lacked training before. If we encounter a real war, it is likely that we will not be able to hold our ground. Once the warriors on the front line collapse in a war, as mages, you will not have a good end. Training the soldiers is also to protect yourself. The war has not even started, and you are already complaining. What will you do if you really go to the battlefield? Lord George's words were very beautiful, and the subordinates of the mages did not dare to refute him. But Amon's approach was really unconventional. They had never heard of a commander who would let the accompanying mages waste magic needlessly, and on the march every day. Amon, a student of Nietzsche, had never had the concept of using magic as taught in the shrine. He would cast magic at any time, even to shelter from the rain and sun. He had long been accustomed to it. He did not think it was a big deal to let the mages do this. The mages did not know that their superior, Lord George, was also a sorcerer in his early years, and was a friend of crazy old Nietzsche. He more or less knew the details of Amon. This time, it could be said that he was cooperating with Amon. But Amon would not let people waste their efforts for nothing. He gave George a precious staff. Although as the high priest of the Temple of Isis, George did not lack good staffs, it was also a good thing to keep in hand or reward his students and subordinates. Amon had obtained 3 staffs in the mysterious big cave. One was Nero's relic, which had been returned, another was given to Link, and the last one was finally given to George. In addition, Amon gave each of the mages a large number of parangons, which was a stunning generosity. When there were rewards, there were punishments. Although the priests didn't dare to complain anymore, they could still be lazy and play tricks. However, Amon didn't give them any face. He didn't care about the noble status of these priests. He once ordered Hardadef to drag out 2 priests who didn't work hard and beat them half to death in front of everyone. From then on, everything went on the right track. Of course, mages were of noble birth. These mages might come from noble families, or they might be relatives of some ministers of the empire. But now, they had to bow their heads for the time being. Even if they had complaints about the head of the legion, they could only wait until the war was over. In this way, Amon marched and trained his troops, advancing steadily along the coastline. 2 months later, when the legion entered the territory of the Cape States and was close to the border, he finally ordered the troops to stop drilling. All officers and soldiers only needed to rest. According to the battle plan, Amon could not advance alone, nor could he fall behind. He had to follow the main force along the northern coastline, according to the speed of the main force. There were scouts passing messages between the NRA Legion and the main army. If it came to a critical juncture, there would be mages using flying vessels to send messages directly to the NRA Legion. The NRA Legion finally left the border and turned north. In front of them was the desolate Saya Desert. The winding coastline divided the blue sea and the pale yellow sand. Waves and dunes spread out as far as the eye could see. The sky was blue, with clusters of white clouds floating in the sky, as if the gods in the sky were herding their flocks. The scenery was so beautiful, but the wilderness was so desolate. In this tranquility, a war was about to break out in the distant desert. After leaving the border, Amon's army marched even more cautiously. He sent mages to take turns to use detection magic to keep an eye on the surroundings. The supply fleet also tailed far behind, no longer getting too close. At this moment, the scout reported an unexpected situation. The Horus Legion, led by Pharaoh himself, did not advance steadily according to the original battle plan. Instead, they suddenly accelerated and rushed to the center of the Saya Desert. The Legion of Set, which was originally stationed at the border, had to change their plan. They covered the civilians and supplies as they entered the desert to follow Pharaoh. According to the original plan, the Legion of Isis and the Horus Legion were supposed to advance side by side. The Legion of Isis was dozens of miles behind, but Pharaoh did not wait at the border. The Horus Legion suddenly accelerated and left the Legion of Isis behind. The Legion of Isis was afraid that something would go wrong. They left the large supplies in the Cape States and accelerated into the Saya Desert with light supplies. This was not in line with the original plan made by Igut's army. The whole strategic situation had changed from a steady advance to a sudden attack. Although the situation on the battlefield was ever-changing and the commander had to make all kinds of last-minute decisions, the general commander had neither the courage nor the authority to make such a big change before the battle had even started. After all, marching according to the plan was meritorious. Even if the battle was not going well, it was still the overall commander's responsibility. However, if the main force launched a surprise attack without authorization, all the cooperating troops had to make corresponding adjustments. Only the commander of the Horus Legion dared to do this because he was the supreme pharaoh. When the Horus Legion launched a surprise attack, they did not give the NRA Legion an order to cooperate. This made Amon a little confused. He did not know if he should advance according to the original plan or follow Pharaoh. After a few days, he received a message from scouts sent by Roddick, the commander of the Legion of Seat, requesting the NRA Legion to speed up and cover the flank of the main battlefield. Not mentioning Amon's doubts, Roddick, who led the Legion of Seat and was responsible for the logistics of the army, was also suffering. He had tried to persuade His Majesty Pharaoh not to change the plan and advance rashly, but Lazith II did not listen at all. In Roddick's view, the national strength of Igut was obviously stronger than Hittite. The Legion's combat strength and equipment also had a great advantage. Advancing steadily was the safest choice. Moreover, this time it was His Majesty Pharaoh who was leading the army in person. There was no room for any mistakes. The only obstacle to conquering Hittite was the huge logistical cost of crossing the Saya Desert. However, there was an accident that disrupted the original battle plan and changed Pharaoh's decision. According to the intelligence report before the war, this time, King Lucier of the Hittite kingdom also led the most elite Enlil Legion into the battlefield. Lucier did not intend to go to the battlefield himself, but the royal nobles, the ministers, and the elders of the Academy of Magic all requested the king to lead the army in person, just like the pharaohs of Igut, even if it was just a symbol. The army of the Empire of Igut was coming fiercely, and the Hittite kingdom had been planning for this war for many years. It was the moment when they needed to unleash their greatest strength in silence. The enemy's Lazith II had already gone to the front line. If King Lucier still hid in the capital, it would give the impression that he was timid and lacked confidence. The king leading the most elite legion in the kingdom was the best way to boost the morale of the army. The meaning of this war for the Hittite kingdom and the Empire of Igut was different. If the Empire of Igut lost, it was nothing more than the loss of a vassal state. But if the Hittite kingdom lost, it would be a turning point for the whole country. At the very least, it would lose a large area of territory, pay heavy tribute, and completely submit to the rule of the Empire of Igut. It would take a long time for it to recover its strength. Although King Lucier was reluctant, he still led the army in person. Saya, which had seemed peaceful over the years, suddenly gathered a well-trained and well-equipped elite legion. It was the Legion of Anu that was originally stationed on the western border. Goliath, as a supreme mage, became the head of the legion. The chief priest of the legion was his disciple Walter, the commander of the front was the supreme warrior Mun, and the chief logistics officer was the governor Shmuel. Another army of Nanner, which was originally stationed on the southern coast, also advanced along the coastline towards the Saya Desert. The Hittite kingdom was well prepared for the war and marched quickly. 3 legions had been assembled in the northern desert area south of the charcoal forest and west of the inland lake. The above was the last news sent back by the spy sent to the Hittite kingdom. It was difficult to cross hundreds of miles of desert without being discovered by the enemy. The latest movements of the enemy were not known through their own channels for the time being. The scouts sent by the Horus Legion went deep into the desert and caught several groups of people in different places. Some were passing caravans, some were fishermen by the seaside, and some claimed to be robbers. Their appearance in this place at this time was naturally very suspicious, so they were all treated as enemy spies. Under torture, they all confessed that they were spies of the Hittite kingdom. All the spies mentioned the same information in their confessions. King Lucier had led the Enlil Legion into battle, and had advanced to the southern shore of the inland lake on the grassland bordering the desert. They were building a permanent camp. The Legion of Anu led by Goliath was stationed in the southern part of Saya, mobilizing combat supplies and building fortifications. They were 200 miles away from the Enlil Legion of the king. Another army of Nanner was stationed near the coastline, 200 miles away from the Legion of Anu. The 3 legions were distributed in an inverted triangle and coordinated with each other, waiting for the Igut army to enter the ambush circle. According to the original battle plan of the Empire of Igut, the main attack route of the Pharaoh army was to directly attack the pass in the southern part of Saya. They would be stopped by the legion of Anu led by Goliath. The other two legions of the Hittite army might suddenly attack from the left and right. Even if they could not cut off the supply line of the Igut army, they could still delay the main force of the Igut army. In this way, the Igut army would have to fight a costly war of attrition on the other side of the desert far away from their homeland. If there was only one person who said this, it might be a trap. However, the spies caught in different locations revealed similar information after interrogation. It seemed that the possibility was very high. His Majesty Pharaoh was very angry at first. He even suspected that there was a traitor among the senior military officials of the Igut army, who provided the top-secret battle plan to the Hittite army, allowing them to make targeted arrangements. The frontline commander of the Horus Legion, General Vatus, the Oracle, and the High Priest of the imperial capital, Ricard, all advised Pharaoh to calm down. According to a normal strategic situation, as long as someone who understood military affairs did a little analysis, they would be able to determine the main attack route of the Igut army. The battle plan formulated by the Egyptian Military Council was nothing out of the ordinary. It was just a well-behaved and steady plan. The Hittite kingdom had been preparing for war for a long time. It was completely normal for them to come up with such a response plan. They would rely on the border to carry out defensive operations and occupy the advantage of logistical supplies and troop replenishment. The Igut army only needed to attack the southern pass of Saya according to the original plan. The main force would fight the legion of Anu led by Goliath head-on. At the same time, a part of the legion of Isis and a large part of the legion of Set would cut off the connection between the legion of Anu and the Enlil legion. This would prevent the Enlil legion from returning. As for the army of Nannar stationed on the coastline, they could let the Anare legion led by Amon take advantage of the opportunity to march north to confront them. They did not expect Amon to win. As long as the army of Nannar could be restrained near the coastline and could not attack the Igut army with the main force, it would be considered a success. You're tuning in to the Lime's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.